Friday, March the 27th. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said podcast. Recorded the interviews for this one on Thursday. So there's one or two things that change. You know how it is. As soon as you record something, then immediately there's news that alters that. So the first interview we have is with Erik, and we talk NFL with Erik. We go through every free agency move for every single team. Literally all of the moves, who we like, what teams have improved, and we talk for an hour NFL. So football fans, if you're a fan of any team, we go through all the moves, what we think, positives, negatives. Really fun listen in that interview. Then we're going to have Chad Cooper on. We talk about the Texans in particular with Chad, some of the moves they made and how he feels on those. And then we're going to talk wrestling with Chad Cooper. We recap the last week of wrestling from WWE and from All Elite Wrestling, and then we kind of continue leading into Wrestlemania, talking about what WWE's plans are for Wrestlemania. Then I'm going to talk a little Gulfstream Park Saturday. I'm going to roll through that card and give some plays all throughout the card. I think I have opinions on almost all the races except for, I think, one or two that I don't really like, kind of just skip right over. But for the most part, we'll give you a good opinion on most of that card for Saturday. Then we close things out with a WrestleMania rewatch. We go back in time and recap WrestleMania 3. Yes, Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan. Remember that one of the biggest wrestling matches in history. And then on that same card, it was one of the best wrestling matches in history between the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. A really good pay-per-view. Darin Zoccali and Andrew Champagne join me, and the three of us discuss that WrestleMania. We spend well over an hour going match by match, all of our thoughts, kind of setting up everything that was happening in that time. That was back in 1987. That was actually 5 days after I was born. Yeah, March the 29th. So obviously I wasn't watching that live or anything, but a show that I've gone back and watched many, many times. So it was really fun to talk about it. So as you can see, we have a packed show. Can't spend a whole lot of time dilly-dallying because this one's going to be very, very long. But I'm sure most of you out there are kicking back and hopefully staying safe, staying inside, and you're flipping on, listening to a lot of different podcasts. So toss this on while you go through your daily activities, and hopefully we can make you some money and we can entertain you. Let's go right away to Erik. Let's talk some NFL. So we're going to go team by team and all of the moves in free agency. Football fans, this will be fun. Not a whole lot going on in the world of sports right now as far as live sports, as far as like sports news, but the one of the major sports that still actually seems like it's functioning right now is the NFL, with free agency just kicking off over the last couple of weeks. And there have been a ton of NFL free agent moves, teams that have been making trades, big name players, something that we just generally don't see a whole lot in the NFL. So we brought on our good buddy Erik to talk about this. We know Erik from Twitter, ETOF21 Sports, and he joined us previously to break down, I think, NFL, XFL games. We've talked a couple different things. And actually, Erik, before we get into to breaking down the all the moves that all the teams made, thanks for joining us again. It's kind of funny because it's like the only two things that are really going are two things that you don't mind following either are wrestling, like WWE, AEW, and horse racing. They're like the two only sports going we have right now.
I know it's nice to actually have some sort of sport to watch on TV. It's really hard for me to watch like a recorded thing, a recorded sporting event. So it's the struggle is real, man.
Yeah. So what are your days? What are your days like right now? So tell us where are you, and so what are things like where you're based?
I am in the northern suburbs of Chicago. Basically, my day is I wake up. I have that DDP yoga app. I do about an hour.
Nice, me too. I love that. Yeah.
I have and do you do what's her name? Christina's workout.
Bang. You know what? I have a really old burn DVD, so I don't do a lot of the new, so for me, it's still YRG Yoga on my DVD.
Oh, okay.
It's so old. It's like 8 years, but the DVD, I have like 6 or 7 workouts on there. So, it ain't broke for me. I don't fix it, right?
Oh, I did the app. I downloaded the app. I do about an hour of that.
Nice.
And then I found this trail by my place, and I run on that for an hour. And then my brother got me hooked on some TV show named, was it Banshee? That's on Amazon Prime.
There we go.
Cinemax. And
there we go.
I'll watch 1 or 2 episodes of that, and I'll just kind of go into some horse racing or like dive into some NFL and just
getting prepped, getting ready for when they do come back. So you're going to be ready to rock, because that's what's nice. You fire away on everything, but the NFL is bread and butter for most people who bet and who wager, and it's just a completely different monster. So we've had generally we see it like in baseball, we see it in basketball. You don't generally see this many big name players moving around so early and like within a week. I mean, how many big name quarterbacks are really solid defensive players, have gone back and forth, traded, changed teams? We're going to see a different NFL when things do start up.
I am so looking forward to this. I've already put in future bets on Super Bowls, on over-under totals, winning divisions. I have my rankings for fantasy already locked in. I mean, there's been so many moving pieces, and I couldn't be more excited for something that's months away.
Okay, well, let's get started, because we're gonna go through every team, and we're gonna mention some of their moves, maybe some of their departures. We'll give some thoughts on each and every team. So whatever team you're a fan of, sit back and enjoy. We're gonna start in the NFC, or we're gonna start in the NFC with the NFC West, and we'll go division by division and mention it. So we'll start with the Arizona Cardinals, who I think they've made a couple nice moves so far, and the big one that we heard about a week and a half ago was the trade with the Texans, where the Arizona Cardinals acquired DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best wide receivers in the game. They ended up trading David Johnson, who, they're okay with that because they place the transition tag on Kenyon Drake. Let's see, some other moves that they've made: agreed to a 1-year deal with Devondre Campbell. Larry Fitzgerald is coming back. He signed a 1-year deal. They agreed to terms with Kennard, linebacker, and Phillips, the DT. So, I mean, the big one for them, obviously, is Hopkins.
You're adding Hopkins, who, in my eyes, is the best wide receiver. He's the best route runner.
On any short list that you're going to make, absolutely.
The best pure catcher of a ball. And he's going to take the team's best DB, the opposing team's best DB, and he'll beat them. So you got him on one side. Underneath, you got Larry Fitzgerald, who's physical and great hands, and a veteran who's not going to complain about not getting the ball. And then on the other side, you're either going to have Christian Kirk and Andy Isabella with speed for deep routes. And then you have Kenyon Drake in the backfield,
who was incredible in the short spurt with them last year.
Oh, it's great. I mean, I always feel with a quarterback, the second year is the year. The second year, if they don't pop in the second year, they're not going to be anything in the
especially when it's like this, a quarterback and the coach and the system, like they were all kind of coming in at it together as rookies, like they should take a big step forward this year now.
And they're giving Murray all the pieces to succeed. The big thing is now with that pick, I believe it's the 8th pick, and the offensive line is very talented this year in this year's draft. They're going to be able to get somebody. And if they address the offensive line, which is their big weakness, because Murray got hit a lot last year. He didn't turn the ball over, which was I really liked in a rookie quarterback, not turning the ball over, but he did get hit too much. So with the 8th pick, they're going to address the offensive line. I actually found the Cards at plus 800 on 5 Dimes, which is one of the online sites I bet on, to win the AFC West, and I actually locked that one in.
Nice. They're playing in a really, at least what we thought and on paper is a really tough division. But one of the teams in the division, kind of scratching my head a little bit, they didn't set themselves up very well over the last couple of years with some of the contracts they were dishing out, and we're starting to see it really come forward now. That's the team that I root for, the Rams, who, when you look around and everyone is kind of making moves, the Rams have not done a whole hell of a lot, and they have lost a lot of key pieces. I guess the big signing for them is locking down Whitworth, who he's already getting a little older and was already struggling a little bit last year, early at least, and then he got better. But this Rams team, they're going to have a tough year this year.
I totally agree. And they are a poster child for not signing players before their contract runs out.
Yep.
Because that's why they're in the position. And the one player they probably should have re-signed early, Aaron Donald, they didn't.
Yep.
Which doesn't make any sense to me. Floyd, they added Floyd. To replace Fowler. But, I mean, me being in Chicago, I mean, Floyd, Pace is getting blasted for drafting Floyd.
Yeah.
And, but it's one of those low risk, high reward. I mean, it's only a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
So they needed somebody. So, and pass rushers are at a premium in the league. So if he can, low risk, high reward. I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. You're right. They did sign Whiteworth, who was huge. And they also re-signed the guard, who I'm spacing on his name. Oh my God. I'm spacing on the guy's name.
Blythe.
Yeah. They re-signed him.
Blythe and then huge. Sean Robinson too. The DT.
But me being a Lions fan, I know way too much about Robinson. I was so high on that kid when they drafted him from Alabama, but he's basically he's not an every down player.
Yeah, that was one of the things is they kind of filled in with replacement level type players or not necessarily top tier players. So we'll see what McVay can pull out of his sleeve this year because he's going to have his coaching boots on. This team is not as good. They're just not as talented as they've been the last couple of years. And last year they didn't even make the playoffs. So
I know. And I really I'm hearing a lot on Twitter about Darrell Henderson. I read a report that McVay said he needed to do a better job of carrying out the play. So I would just be really conscientious about ranking him too high in fantasy. I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams actually do draft like a running back just because this class is pretty deep. I mean, you could probably get A.J. Dillon from BC like in the 4th, 5th round, and that guy's going to be a bruiser in the league.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they have like the future running back there yet. So maybe they're a team. Maybe they're going to be looking for at least one or two more to kind of package like the 3 together as a committee.
I think so, and it wouldn't be surprised me if they could actually unload Cooks if they looked at.
That's the rumor also that they're still trying to get rid of him. So just going to look like a very different team than they were a few years ago, and even last year. And they're in a tough division because they're playing alongside teams like the San Francisco 49ers, who, hey, you know what? When you're just a few minutes away from winning the Super Bowl, I guess you don't really have to do a whole heck of a lot, but the 49ers re-signed Armstead on a 5-year deal worth up to $85 million. They signed a 1-year deal with Travis Benjamin, center Ben Garland re-signed, and Jimmy Ward, safety re-signed. So they locked down some big pieces there, and I don't think they felt like they needed to do a whole lot.
Well, I mean, the main thing is it was down to who did they want, Armstead or Buckner.
And they had to pick, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they got the 13th pick. And they're going to be able to get somebody with a 13th pick, an impact player, maybe a wide receiver, or someone to help out in their back four. I mean, I would probably Lamb would be my guess. I mean, because they do need that wide receiver one because they did lose Sanders. I like Debo, but is Debo really a wide receiver one? I don't think he is. I think re-signing Jimmy Ward was huge because he can come up, he can play against the run, he can cover any position. My 2 big questions with the 49ers are A, how good is Jimmy G? I've never been a really big Jimmy G guy. And the fact that all these rumors were coming out that the 49ers were going to go after Brady, that's kind of telling me that were the 49ers the ones that leaked the rumors and they don't have any faith in Jimmy G? That's kind of how I'm looking at it. I've never been a big Jimmy G guy.
Me too. I think the jury is at least still out for me. I think a team can win with him, but he's going to make mistakes. Like it felt like last year's version of the 49ers was the most perfect situation for him to shine and for him to win. And just because he didn't doesn't mean he can't come back and win sometime in the future. But everything went very well for San Francisco most of last year. Even if they regress a little bit and they don't, and they are, a playoff team or, not a division winner, maybe a wild card type team, they don't win quite as many games. They're still pretty talented. Their defense is going to be good. But I think I'm kind of with you in that I'm still a little bit concerned if they have enough skill on the offensive side of the ball, skill players. Maybe one more pass catcher, or maybe it's some sort of an upgrade offensively. Maybe Jimmy G does take the next step. He still was just coming back I'm not ready to say he's bad, but I'm definitely not in his camp. So I think I'm still ready to give him maybe another year or two before I kind of write the book on him quite yet. Yeah. But this is a tough division, man. And we move on to the Seahawks, who Philip Dorsett, they signed to a one-year deal. Quentin Dunbar acquired in a trade with the Redskins. B.J. Finley helping the offensive line a little bit, which they desperately need. Jacob Hollister, they take a shot on Greg Olsen also. Bruce Irvin, Abuhe, and Jerron Reed. So they've been pretty active so far, and they're a team that, they should be right in the mix again and contending.
Yeah, I mean, I think signing Irvin, getting an edge rusher is important. I mean, obviously, if Giovanni Clowney doesn't re-sign, I mean, that's going to hurt them, but at least they got Irwin there to help out. Dorsett is going to frustrate the hell out of fantasy people.
Yes.
He's going to have 18 receptions, 6 touchdowns, and it's going to drive everyone crazy. I love DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf, when he was in college, he was a body catcher, and he morphed into using his hands more as the season progressed.
Yeah, because there was kind of some negative buzz on him coming in. Like he wasn't like it was just kind of raw talent, but how much of a work ethic does he have? Is he going to improve? Is he going to put in the time you need to be good? But he was excellent. He was excellent.
Oh, he's improved a lot, and I fully expect him to be wide receiver 1 by week 8. By week 8, he's going to be the alpha on the wide receiving court. My big question is, because Seattle does like to run the ball, is their backfield. Carson and Penny are both hurt. Do you bring back Lynch? You have Homer. I mean, they have a lot of questions in the backfield for me. I know,
especially for a team like you said who wants to run the ball. They need a little bit more, I guess, certainty back there.
Yeah, because I heard Penny's not going to be back week 6 the earliest, and I don't even know if Carson's going to be ready by season starts. I don't know what they're going to do. And I mean, Lynch is getting up there. I mean, I love beast mode, but he's getting to be an old man.
Okay, let's move to your division. We're going to go to the NFC North next, and we'll start out with the Bears. The Bears. So the issue for the Bears last year, they were really kind of a team that felt like they were maybe a year ahead of schedule 2 years ago, and then everybody was really high on them coming in last year, and I kind of wasn't because they had a little bit of a tougher schedule. Trubisky was just plain and simple not very good. So what they do is they go out and make a move to bring in Nick Foles to sort of at least have a quarterback competition, so they say. So they make a trade with the Jags to bring in Nick Foles. They signed quarterback Artie Burns. They re-signed safety Deion Bush. They bring in tight end Jimmy Graham, who hasn't really been a whole lot the last couple of years, but he's still a big target there. Jermaine Ifedi, Robert Quinn, edge rusher, and then Trevathan re-signed in a 3-year extension. So they've made some moves in here, and obviously the big one is bringing in Foles to at least battle with Trubisky for the starting quarterback job.
And I mean, the main thing, I think the reason they went with Foles as compared to like Newton is because Foles has been in that position where he's been on the bench and he won't let it disrupt the locker room.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point.
Upon, he can be a leader, and he's shown like he can go in and he can rally the troops and he can lead the team to a victory. Also, the Jimmy Graham thing, Foles is more of a guy that will push the ball down the field. Granted, Graham hasn't been relevant since, for a while. Yeah. He wasn't even relevant in Seattle.
No, not really. Kind of like the end of New Orleans even, yeah.
So, I mean, at least they got a tight end, but in the Nagy offense, the tight end really isn't used that much. I like the Quinn. I like them signing Quinn. That gives, when Mac gets the attention, Quinn's going to be able to rush on the opposite side to get to the quarterback. My big issue with the Bears is actually Matt Nagy. I really felt there was no difference between what he did the first year and what he did last year. I just feel he's a stubborn guy. And he's like, my system will win. I'll just call the plays. And there was no confusion.
Adjustment. Yeah, there's no adjustment to kind of his roster or to what's going on in the games. You're right. It doesn't seem like they adjust. They just, this is what we're going to do. Let's do it. And you just can't do that in this NFL nowadays.
And then also, like, they don't give – I love David Montgomery. I loved him at Iowa State. And I was so excited with everybody else when they drafted him. And they just don't give him the ball. Now, I understand, like, weeks 1 and 2 and 3, he was having a real hard time picking up the blitz and blocking, which was limiting his time on the field. But that got better as the year progressed, and they still weren't giving him the ball. There was that one game, I forget what week, and they only ran the ball. It was something absurd, like 9 or 11 times. And the press asked Nagy after the game, and he had no clue. And as an NFL coach, that blows my mind.
Yeah, he was supposed to be such a nice, like an offensive mind when he came in, and everybody thought he was going to be this whisperer and be able to, to just be a great play caller and orchestrate this great offense. And we have not seen it yet. So maybe with more weapons or with a at least another option at quarterback, they'll be improved this year. We will see. Let's move to your squad, the Detroit Lions, who have now been kind of picking up a lot of with Patricia. They're kind of picking up a lot of the old Patriots. It seems like Jamie Collins signs to a 3-year, $30 million deal. They pick up quarterback Chase Daniel, Harmon, the DB, acquired in a trade from the Pats. Curse safety, Killebrew the safety, Shelton on the defensive line, Trufant cornerback, offensive line with Vaitai and Nick Williams on the defensive line. So they've at least been active, been busy. How do you feel about your Lions right now?
Well, the main thing for me is we have 4 picks in the top 85. So we actually, if Quinn can nose out some talent, we can get some pieces that can add on right away. The defense, for Patricia being a defensive genius, was awful last year. I forget the game. We played the Vikings. We put up, and the Vikings D was legit last year. We put up 35 points and still lost.
Yep.
And
it was like you couldn't get one stop, and that's why you lost. It wasn't even like you couldn't stop a multiple. It was like one stop you just needed because you guys were going back and forth with them, back and forth, and then it just so happened that they were able to score twice in a row, and that was the difference in the game.
That was the game. And the same thing with the Chiefs game when they played the Chiefs at home. The defense was so disappointing, and I hope that Patricia stops calling it and gives it over to the DC this year. I really hope that he just coaches this year and totally takes himself away from it. The offense, when Stafford was healthy, that offense looked unbelievable. I do feel, though, that they need to add another wide receiver. This draft class, the wide receiver depth is pretty good. And also got to make a decision if Kerryon's an every down back or not. This is 2 years in a row, and 2 years in a row in the league he's been hurt. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Lions.
We move on to one of the big rivals, Green Bay Packers, who they kind of made a lot of their big moves last year in free agency. So I don't think they were even really expecting to do a whole heck of a lot. They signed a 2-year deal with linebacker Christian Kirksey, Devin Funchess, a wide receiver, Mercedes Lewis re-signed with the Packers. Rick Wagner on the offensive line helps them out a bit. They did lose an offensive lineman, though, and a couple other small skill position players. But I think for them, they made a lot of their big moves on the defensive end last year.
Oh, for sure. And their defense was great last year.
Good, yeah.
Was good. I feel, though, that their offensive line is going to take a step back this year. And they do need a slot wide receiver. Funchess is a big physical guy that can go up and win a jump ball when you're inside the 5, which is great. But they need someone working the underneath.
A little possession.
Yeah. And Mercedes Lewis, he's pretty old. So they need a tight end too. So tight end and slot, they'll definitely address in the draft.
And then a team that they haven't done a whole heck of a lot, and they've lost a lot of players that have been key contributors for them over the last couple of years. That's the Minnesota Vikings. They signed kicker Dan Bailey, CJ Ham they bring back, fullback, safety Anthony Harris, offensive tackle Rashad Hill, Michael Pierce, the DT, Tajay Sharp, wide receiver, and Eric Wilson, linebacker. But they've lost some key pieces on the defensive end. And Stephon Diggs is gone now, so that's a big wide receiver loss for them also. I think they maybe take a little step back to kind of, just average, maybe even slightly below average this year.
I felt last year they did really well. And they pound the ball with Cook, and everyone was saying that was Stefanski. Actually, they incorporated Gary Kubiak, the guy that used to be the coach for the Broncos and coach for the
Texans, right?
Texans. Yeah. They incorporated his zone blocking scheme. And that's what allowed Cook to have that big breakout year like he had last year. And they're going to be running that same system. And Mike Zimmer likes running the ball 30, 40 times a game. So, is losing Diggs that big?
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it doesn't hurt them as much with the style of football that they want to play.
And he's a headache. When he doesn't get the ball, he complains so much.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a locker room move. My biggest fear on offense for them is the numbers Thielen puts up when he plays the slot versus outside are night and day. If they move him to the outside, he's going to take a huge step backwards in terms of fantasy value. If they keep him working the slot, working the underneath, he's going to put up the same numbers that he has been putting up. This wide receiver depth in the draft is insane.
Yeah,
it's almost like it feels that like the Texans and the Vikings were just like, hey, you know what? We can just get somebody for cheaper in the draft and not put up with a headache.
And they just got to hope they get the right piece.
Yeah.
So we'll move on from the NFC North to the NFC East.
Yeah.
And we will start with the Cowboys. So Dallas, the big thing that Dallas has done so far is they re-signed Amari Cooper, obviously, and then they put the exclusive franchise tag on Dak Prescott. They signed a deal with cornerback Anthony Brown, Clinton Dix, safety they brought in, re-signed the kicker Kai Forbath, signed Blake Jarwin, Sean Lee, linebacker re-signed, Joe Looney, center guard, they brought him back, Gerald McCoy, defensive tackle, Terry Poe, defensive tackle, and Darian Thompson. So they've been busy, but a lot of moves just kind of bringing back pieces that were key for them. Where do you stand with Dallas?
Frederick retiring. You're losing an all-pro center. That's huge. And I'm not a Prescott guy at all. I'm not a Prescott guy at all.
I kind of feel like we were talking about with Jimmy G. Like, I think Dak is better, like a little bit more talented, but I'm not. I could go either way on him. It just depends. Like, he's one of the guys that I guess it just depends on when you click in the game to watch him, because he's looked so great sometimes, and then other times he just looks like a guy.
Yeah, and the question is, do you feel he can lead a team to the Super Bowl? I say no. I don't think he can. And I feel like last year, I thought they had a great roster, one of the more talented rosters, and the only position that was really holding them back was the quarterback play.
Yeah, because I feel like we wanted to pile on the coach a whole heck of a lot in that situation. But when you're the quarterback and you're out there and you're the one really calling the plays and you're the one that's able to make a change and you're the one that's able to see things, like if you're a great leader, you have to be able to help that out a little bit better, to bridge that relationship a little bit better. Even if your coach is weighing you down, you got to be able to see that and maybe rise above it. And he's never really done that so far. And so maybe with a new coach, with a new scheme, we can give them an opportunity. But I'm kind of with you. I'm on Dallas. I'm always just kind of like I never really love them. And I always think that they're going to get, they're always going to be a little undervalued because of who they are, Dallas. And we'll see if they're able to kind of work anything out with that.
And when you bring in a new coach that was away from the game, when you're away from the game, you're not learning and seeing the transformation that the game is taking firsthand. And how much was McCarthy actually studying the game and putting in work to make adjustments to his system, or is he just sitting there? I don't know. So I'm kind of lukewarm on this hire. I don't really, it could either go great or it could go bad. I mean, I know he's won a Super Bowl and everything, but I don't know how much work he did when he wasn't working last year.
Let's go to the New York Giants. They agreed to a 3-year, $45 million deal with cornerback James Bradbury. They signed DB Nate Ebner, linebacker Kyler Fackrell, tackle Cam Fleming, Dion Lewis, running back. Will give them a little change of pace for Barkley. Blake Martinez, linebacker, 3-year, $30 million deal. Linebacker David Mayo, they re-signed. Colt McCoy, backup quarterback there for them. And Toilo, who tight end, agreed to a 2-year deal. Leonard Williams, they put the franchise tag on their defensive line. So they've been active. I thought Dion Lewis might give him a nice little change of pace to help Barkley if he needs to be spelled for a few. I guess for them, they're going to kind of go as far as their quarterback will take them. Do you think the Giants show any improvement this year? What do you think of what they've done?
I love the Giants. I actually like the Giants in at plus 725 to win the East.
Nice.
The main thing with Bradbury is going from covering Michael Williams and Julio Jones to covering what a lead wide receiver besides Amari Cooper in that division.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Philly, not a whole lot. Washington, not a whole heck of a lot. So that's a great point.
And you can put him on the best wide receiver and he can lock that down. Now, Clowney has said Giants are on top of his list. If they can add that pass rusher, add him. And they're in a great position. All the mock drafts say they're getting Isaiah Simmons from the Clemson, who's, in my eyes, probably the best defensive player on the board, who's going to be a game changer at this level. And then you add Garrett's offense, and Garrett is going to utilize the tight end more than
he's a fine coordinator. You know what? He's just not a good head coach. He can he's fine in this role. He really is.
Exactly. So Ingram's going to have a good year. You have Ingram, they're going to use the tight end more. You're going to get Barkley the ball more, and then you have Lewis to come in and spell him as a third down back. I actually love what the Giants are doing. And like I said, I locked a bit at plus 725 to win the division.
And we it's just not the strongest division either. They don't feel like they have to improve a whole lot, and every year we see it in the NFL. There are a couple teams that were really bad the one year, and the next year they're in the playoff hunt. And you know what? This year with the expanded playoffs, we're going to get an opportunity to see a couple extra teams make the postseason. Let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles, who, I mean, they were just such a banged up year for them last year. It was amazing that they were still able to get there. Every week they were just new set of wide receivers, new set of running backs, and we didn't know any of them. Some of their moves signed Jatavius Brown, linebacker. Hargrave, they agreed to a 3-year, $39 million deal. Roddy McLeod, safety. Jalen Mills, safety. Will Park, safety. Nicole Roby-Coleman, cornerback. Darius Slay, cornerback. And the Sudfeld for backup quarterback. So their defense, they strengthened the hell out of their defense, especially their secondary.
Being a Lions fan, I love Big Play Slay. I actually have a Big Play Slay jersey.
Nice.
He can play zone, man-to-man, be physical, high point a ball. He can do everything. But he's 30 years old, and they signed him for, it was like $16 million a year. Now he's the highest paid quarterback.
Yeah, 3-year, $50 million. So they definitely paid $30 million guaranteed. That's the one thing we've seen with a lot of these deals, especially the deals that happen early in free agency. A lot of them, they're paying sticker price. You know, there's no discount prices, you know.
None at all. And I like Hargrove. I think he's going to fit perfectly in the 4-3 system. He's playing out of position, I feel, in the 3-4 system at Pittsburgh. But I like them. He's going to immediately improve that defensive line. But still, like you mentioned, the big thing is wide receiver. I really thought that they'd at least make a play for Robbie Anderson because they need that deep threat in that offense, because the offense works so much better with the deep threat. And last year with D-Jack being hurt, they didn't have that. So them not going after Robbie Anderson surprised me, but I mean, like I've said before, with how deep this wide receiver class is, they're probably just going to go after a wide receiver in this class.
And then go ahead.
Carson Wentz worries me just because it seems like he's hurt all the time. Yeah,
it's his health. You know, I don't, when he's on the field, I trust him, you know, for the most part. I think he does a great job when he's out there. I don't, if I need him late in the game to drive down and get a touchdown, I feel like he's the type of guy that could do it. But what do they say sometimes? The best ability is availability. And we haven't seen him do it yet for a full year.
Oh, and then he gets hurt in that playoff game. Mm-hmm. And the year they won it, it was all Foles.
He was Foles. I mean, he was great early, and then it was Foles down the stretch. Yeah.
Like, you have to wonder if they made the right decision by keeping Wentz. Mm-hmm. If he gets hurt this year, you have to wonder if they made the right decision. So that's my big worry with Philly.
And then to close out the NFC East, Washington. You know, Washington's a team I've been hearing a little bit of buzz about. Their defense, they at least have a little bit more talent. They seem like on their roster, they're bringing in some defensive pieces that are okay. They brought in backup quarterback Kyle Allen to maybe help. Kyle Allen was good in his first couple of games, I guess. Serviceable in his first couple of games for Carolina, and then he kind of fell off. Peyton Barber, they signed running back to a 2-year deal. Sean Davis, the safety. Thomas Davis, linebacker. Kendall Fuller, cornerback. Cody Latimer, wide receiver. J.D. McKissick, running back. Kevin Pierre-Lewis, linebacker. Brandon Scherf, guard. And Wes Schweitzer, guard. So those are the moves that the Redskins have made.
The big thing with the Redskins is what are they going to do with Trent Williams? Are they going to be able to trade him for a third-round pick, or are they just going to release him? That's the first thing they have to figure out what they're going to do with him. The signing of Barber tells me that's the end of Geis. And I loved Geis when he came out of LSU. But again, hurt the last 2 years.
Bad luck, man, with the injuries. It's just you just never get the opportunity. He's never just had an opportunity to get going. He's never been just out of the blocks at all. Every time it feels like he has a good game or a little spurt, and then he's out of the game, and we see him on the sidelines, and we're already assuming that he's injured. So there's your NFC East, and then we're gonna jump into the division that has made the most splash so far. That's the NFC South. Man, we have 3 teams in particular that are going to look quite a bit different. Let's start out, and we're going alphabetically. Let's start out with the Atlanta Falcons. So Atlanta, they had a weird year last year. They had a couple of really good games. They had a little spurt where they played pretty well. They beat a couple good teams, but they have to have been considered a disappointment. Now they're going to bring in just a couple moves. DT, Tyler Davison, Dante Fowler Jr. on the edge comes in. They get Todd Gurley, and for the price, a 1-year, $6 million deal, it's kind of not a bad swing. He hasn't been the same Gurley maybe the last year and a half, but if you're not paying him a whole heck of a lot and he's kind of maybe a prove it, maybe he's got a little chip on his shoulder trying to prove that he's still healthy. They bring in Hayden Hurst from the Ravens because the Ravens were just loaded with tight ends. What do you think about the Falcons?
I like the Falcons a lot. I like the Gurley signing a lot.
Yeah.
Just because in Dirk Cutter's running scheme, he's more of a power running scheme. That's why Devontae Freeman didn't fit in last year, because Freeman's a zone runner, and it would be funny. You'd watch Freeman run, and he'd just plow right into the back of the offensive lineman. It was the funniest thing watching a Falcons game last year. And Gurley's going to face less 8 in the box because they're going to have to account for Ridley, Hayden Hurst, and Julio. So I really feel that they're putting him. This is the best spot for Gurley. My one concern with the Falcons is Dirk Cutter.
Yep.
If you watch the Falcons last year, it was really weird. When they were ahead, they played fast. And when they were behind, they played slow. And Dirk Cutter is kind of scummy. Like, he was the offensive coordinator for the Bucs back in the day during the Lovie Smith days. And he completely was the reason Lovie got fired. And I felt last year when I was watching the Falcons with how he was calling the plays, he was kind of doing the same thing with Quinn. But, Quinn kept them on the defensive end. I love how they brought in Fowler. I also loved how they took, I'm spacing on the guy's name. Raheem Morris was an offensive coach last year. They moved him to the DB coach last year. Defense immediately approved the last couple of games. Now he's the DC. So I really like what they're doing. And I'm not going to lie, if Dirk Cutter wasn't there, I would definitely have a future bet on this team to win the Super Bowl.
A lot of movement and a new quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. For as long as we can remember, it's been Cam Newton back there, MVP, got him to the Super Bowl. Now it's going to be Teddy Bridgewater calling the plays. They bring in wide receiver Robbie Anderson, safety Trey Boston, wide receiver Pharaoh Cooper, tight end Seth DeValve, guard John Miller, offensive line Russell Okung, Seth Roberts from the wide receiver, PJ Walker, quarterback who actually comes in, was playing in the XFL. Stephen Weatherly, defensive end, and then Tahir Whitehead, linebacker. So they've been active, and the big moves that everyone's going to notice are, obviously Bridgewater, Anderson, and Okung, who has been a little banged up, but when he's good, he's still a very capable offensive lineman. So this team is going to look a lot different.
I'll be honest, I have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
There's only one football on the offensive side, and you bring in Robbie Anderson, who's he's a one-dimensional wide receiver who just goes deep. And you got Bridgewater, who I am not a Teddy Bridgewater fan at all. I think he signed for way too much money, to be honest with you. And he doesn't throw the ball down the field at all. So that move doesn't make sense to me. And also, I honestly feel PJ Walker is more mobile, and the offense would look better if PJ Walker was the quarterback one, or if they would have signed Chase Keenum instead and just let Chase just game manage it and use that money to shore up the offensive line or do the defensive line. I just really have no idea.
You're right. They're kind of like doing. Just throwing some things at the wall and seeing what sticks. It doesn't seem like they really have a game plan moving forward. Are we going to go all in and try to win, or are we going to rebuild? It seems like they're kind of piecing things together. versus like having a set strategy. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They just don't have a plan. It's like, let's just see what happens. And that's what I don't know. So it's really weird to me. Also, McCaffrey, he touched the ball over 400 times last year and over 300 the year before. That's going to start to catch up with him.
Yeah, at some point, right? It's going to wear on him now soon, and you need some other pieces to start to kind of alleviate that workload from him. And you're right. He's unbelievable that how durable he's been. It really is impressive that he's just been able to keep going and sustain this over the last couple of years. And we'll see if he can continue next year, because they're going to be in a tough division with a team like the Saints, who they bring back Breeze. Taysom Hill plays the first-round tender. Safety Malcolm Jenkins, DT Onyemata, offensive tackle Andrews Pete. They signed Emmanuel Sanders, who could be a nice fit there. I mean, we haven't, and then they bring in a DJ Swearinger 1-year deal. There hasn't really been another good receiver opposite Michael Thomas in a while, and Emmanuel Sanders might be able to. I mean, with Michael Thomas there, he's going to be open quite a bit.
The Saints, I think they did a great job. I think bringing in Sanders, this is going to be the best sidekick that Thomas has had. And Peyton, he's a pretty smart guy. He's pretty smart on the offensive end. When he gets to the playoffs, he kind of messes around a little bit too much for my liking and calls
a little too cute. Yeah, he gets a little too cute.
I mean, in my eyes, the Saints for the last 2 years, not counting this year, so the last 2 years, they've had the most talented roster. And the fact they haven't won a Super Bowl is crazy to me. And I really feel in situations in the playoffs, Peyton does get too cute. Like, why is Taysom Hill in the game in critical situations trying to make a play? That doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather have Drew Brees throwing the ball, getting the ball to Michael Thomas, getting the ball to Kamara. But I like how they kept their offensive line intact, because I felt their offensive line was an underrated group. I'm sorry, man. Alexa, stop.
No problem. It's okay.
I really felt their offensive line was keeping them intact was really important. I love what they're going to do. I think they're going to win, at least make the playoffs, probably win the division. But that first playoff game, they're going to be a straight bet against again, like they were this past year. So that's my take on the Saints.
The big one, the TB, Tom Brady, going to look a little weird in a uniform that is not a New England Patriots uniform. Tom Brady signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2 years, $50 million guaranteed. They also bring back Shaq Barrett, who was awesome last year. Offensive line Joe Haig, linebacker Kevin Minter, edge rusher Jason Pierre-Paul re-signs, and then they bring back Ndamukong Suh on a 1-year deal. So a couple of pieces on the defense, but obviously the big one here is Brady, who's going to have the best wide receivers maybe that he's ever had to throw to.
Yeah, my main thing is on January 5th. I put in a bet at 20-1 that he would go to the Bucs. So I am thrilled he went to the Bucs.
Well done.
But this isn't the same Tom Brady that was 4 years ago, and he really can't throw the ball down the field. I think it really helps Godwin a lot. I think I have Godwin third on my board right now because Godwin works the slot more. I think Mike Evans' fantasy value is going to go down, and Tampa Bay right now is 15-1 to win the Super Bowl, which is way too low for me.
Yeah.
And people are drinking the Kool-Aid way too much. I think the bigger thing for them was getting Suh to re-sign on a 1-year deal for only $8 million because they were so good against the run last year. And them being able to stop the run and putting pressure on the quarterback is going to help that young secondary out a lot. But this is a tough division. This isn't the AFC East that have weaker quarterbacks. I actually bet Tampa Bay under 9.5 wins.
Yeah, they're going to take a ton of money. They're going to be a buzz team. Everyone's going to see Brady, and they're going to bet them. They're just going to get a lot of popular money this year. So they're going to be a good team to maybe kind of fade a little bit as we move from the NFC to the AFC. And we'll start with the AFC West, and we will start with the Denver Broncos in the AFC West. So Denver, the big move that Denver made was bringing in Melvin Gordon, 2 years, $16 million deal. They acquire A.J. Boye in a trade with the Jags, defensive line Jarrell Casey, offensive guard Graham Glasgow, Sean Martin, punter, and then tight end Nick Vannett. Those are the moves that the Broncos have made. They're never a team that seems far away. It's gonna for them. It'll come down to what their quarterback play looks like. But I guess it was weird to me that they brought in Gordon because they seemed like they were okay with the two backs that they've had the last few years, but they want to bring in Gordon.
I love the Denver Broncos. I love that they brought in Gordon to be the bell cow. I never was a Philip Lindsay guy. I thought
he's got to be a change. He can't be your one. He can't be your one. I just don't think.
I love it. I actually really like Drew Lock. When I watch a first-year quarterback, I watch their ball velocity and if it floats and if they're stepping into the throws. I'm telling you, he steps into the throws and he's transferring that weight to the left foot. And I love how he zips it in there. And they're just adding another weapon, and they're putting a second-year quarterback in a position to succeed. They got that tight end Noah Flant. They got Cortland Sutton on the outside. They have a first-round pick. I bet you they're probably going to draft a wide receiver. They're just surrounding Locke with pieces to succeed. I actually got them at 10-1 to win the West. I love what they're doing, and if their offensive line can stay healthy because they kept that intact and added a couple pieces, I think they're going to do great. And their defense is always solid. I mean, granted, they lost Harris, but they'll be able to replace him in-house easily.
The Super Bowl champs, never easy to win back-to-back. The Chiefs will try to do that. They sign Antonio Hamilton, cornerback, to a 1-year deal. Chad Henne, backup quarterback, re-signs on a 2-year deal. D-tackle Chris Jones and running back Damian Williams. They picked up the option for him. So not a whole lot with the team who just won. I mean, when you have a quarterback like Mahomes, for them, it's kind of like you're always going to be in it with a guy like Mahomes and with some of the skill positions that they have. They're pretty well set up for a while.
Yeah. I mean, Mahomes, I love him. He took it.
Yeah.
I was never a Mahomes guy the first year, but.
No, me neither. He won me over, though, man. He really did. Yeah.
Especially in the Texans game when they were down that 21-0 and you saw him on the sidelines rallying up the troops.
Just confident. Yep.
Yeah, that's when he won me over. The three things with them are they're going to run in next year to the same issue the Rams are having because they have that big contract with Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill. Losing Fuller in the secondary hurts. And is Jones going to sign the franchise tag or not? If he does, losing Jones would be huge. If Jones holds out on the franchise, that's going to be a big loss for them. I actually locked. I'm sorry, I forgot.
Go ahead.
I locked in under 11.5 wins on them at plus 105.
Yeah, their division I feel like is going to be better because we feel like the Denver Broncos are going to improve. I actually don't mind what the Chargers have done, even losing Phillip Rivers, and they're going to be still competitive. They're not a bad team. And the Raiders are the next team we're going to talk about. The Las Vegas Raiders now. They signed Nelson Aguilar to a 1-year deal, cornerback Eli Apple, defensive tackle Malik Collins, safety Jeff Heath, offensive lineman Eric Kush, Kwiatkowski linebacker, Corey Littleton from the Rams linebacker, Marcus Mariota as kind of the backup quarterback or to battle for a starting job, Carl Nassib, defensive end, and then Jason Witten, the veteran tight end. So they've been busy. There are a couple spots that they seem like they filled. They were kind of ahead of schedule last year. I mean, this was a team that wasn't far away from making the playoffs until they had that really bad stretch late in the year. What do you think about them moving to Vegas and Gruden, and what do you think about the Raiders this year?
The best way I can sum up the moves they did is none of them are sexy, but they're just solid.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing with me
is they filled their holes. They did.
Nothing was sexy, just solid. I really don't understand why they're bringing in all these tight ends of O'Leary and Witten when they have Darren Waller. And obviously, I think this is the end of the Derek Carr era with all the rumors about trying to get Tom Brady. And now you bring in Mariota. It wouldn't surprise me if they replaced him. And the big thing with me and Derek Carr are always going to be the what if. The 2016 Raiders, I love that team. I actually had a huge future on them. And I felt they're the best team in the NFL, but that was the year that
he got hurt,
broke his fibula.
And then we got that horrible playoff game where it was backup quarterback against backup quarterback on the Texans, right? Yeah.
So with him, it's always going to be what if, but I really feel this is going to be the end of the road of him, of his tenure in the Raiders the Las Vegas Raiders this year.
And in the Los Angeles Chargers, we know that the big difference for them this year is going to be no Phillip Rivers under center. It looks like it's going to be Tyrod Taylor right now. We're not sure if maybe they're the type of team that maybe takes a run on a Cam Newton, because maybe Cam Newton and Tyrod Taylor are kind of similar players that can run, that are mobile a little bit, so you don't have to necessarily change the offense if they're going to be your quarterback and backup. They bring in offensive lineman Brian Bulaga, who their offensive line has been atrocious. That'll help. They sign Eckler, who I love. I mean, Eckler is really, really good, but can he be – I guess we will see. Can he take the pounding every game under center and catch the ball? He's really, really good. Chris Harris, cornerback, and they play in the franchise tag on Henry, who's an awesome tight end, but he gets banged up a little too much. Offensive guard Trey Turner, and then defensive tackle Linval Joseph. What do you think about the Chargers?
They shored up the offensive line,
yep.
And their defense was Their defense was what, top 5 last year, top 6?
It's always good. Yep.
So, and you add a good DB in Harris. So they're basically just covering the basics. I really don't know if are they going to take a quarterback in the draft and then kind of have Taylor, like he was in Cleveland, be, hey, start the season. Or
maybe the bridge quarterback. Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do in terms of fantasy. Eckler was a beast last year, but God, Rivers checked the ball down so much. So if they get a younger guy, so if, let's say they draft Jordan Love, someone with a bigger arm,
and not Eckler's the best decision making, who's forcing it a little bit, yeah.
But Eckler's PPR value will go down a little bit. Like I think he's a good third down back. I think he can catch the ball in the backfield. But I have my questions about him being an RB1 bell cow back.
We move from the AFC West to the AFC North. And, I mean, the team that was the best team in football almost the whole year last year was the Baltimore Ravens. They beat the crap out of good teams, and they definitely shored up their defense. They bring in Michael Brockers, defensive tackle, 3-year, $30 million deal. They make a trade to bring in Calais Campbell. They traded with the Jags. They bring in edge rusher Matt Judon, center Matt Skura, cornerback Jimmy Smith, and then defensive end Jihad Ward. So for a team who was already good, that's a lot of moves on the defensive side of the ball.
I just blows my mind that the Jags got a 5th round for Campbell. That move is a Hopkins level type. What the heck are you doing? Did you even call anyone
else, or just that's what they offer? Like, first offer, boom, we're taking it.
So having him being able to get to the quarterback and stop the run, that's huge. My big questions, I know they lost the offensive lineman. I'm spacing on his name to retirement. Oh my God. Yada. They lost him to retirement.
Yonda.
That's going to be huge. And as the season progressed, teams got more tape on Lamar. And what is Lamar's next step going to be? How is he going to transcend? Because you know how it is. Everyone gets more tape on you. They figure out your offense, figure out your tendencies. What's the next step? What are you going to do to combat that? That's my big question with Baltimore. And also I feel what's going to happen when the running back, Mark Ingram, he deteriorated as the year went on. Are they going to draft one? Are they just going to let Justice Hill be the RB1 now? So they have a couple questions for me. Also, Jackson funneled the ball to the tight end a lot. In the NFL, you need to have someone on the outside that can make a play. So they definitely need to add some wide receiver help.
The next two teams have been really active. Generally, we don't see the Bengals making a whole lot of moves in free agency. They spend a good amount of money. They don't make a ton of deals, but they bring in cornerback Mackenzie Alexander. They bring in safety Von Bell, 3-year, $18 million deal. They place a franchise tag on A.J. Green. They have a 4-year, $53 million deal with D-tackle DJ Reader, and then a 3-year, $42 million deal with Trey Wayne. So they locked up a couple of big contracts.
And the big thing with them is Jonah Williams, who's going to play left tackle. He was hurt all last year. So they got him in the draft. He's coming back. And everyone seems to forget about it because when they talk about them drafting Joe Burrow, what's the line going to look like? Well, you have a first-round talent player from last year coming back, and then they're going to address the line in the second and the third-round pick in this year's draft. I really like the Bengals.
They're a little sneaky. I think they're going to improve a lot. They have the opportunity to, yeah.
I think Joe Mixon, behind an improved offensive lineman, I'll call it right now, is going to be a top 5 fantasy back next year.
Right next door is the Cleveland Browns. And, they were the buzz team last year, and you sniffed out that you just thought they were a good team to play against in a lot of their over-unders and a lot of like week-to-week situations. We were on them a couple different times together, and their talent is there. And maybe now with a new coach and some new acquisitions this year. So they bring in Andrew Billings, defensive tackle, Jack Conklin. That's a huge move for them on the offensive line, an offensive line that was bad. They bring in linebacker BJ Goodson, 1-year deal, tight end Austin Hooper, running back Kareem Hunt. They placed a second-round tender on Andy Janovich, fullback, Kevin Johnson, cornerback, Carl Joseph, safety, Case Keenum is the backup quarterback, and Andrew Sendejo, safety. So they've been pretty busy.
The only move I don't like is the Austin Hooper move. I love how they brought in Conklin. I think he was the best free agent on the market, in my opinion, because football, even at the highest level, is won inside the trenches, and he's going to be a lockdown guy on that line. So I love that. The Hooper move, I understand is Stefanski's offense. They like to use 2 tight ends, but you already have David Njoku. You already have Beckham, you already have Landry. You have enough offensive weapons. Why not use that money to get another defensive lineman, get another offensive lineman, and then just get a tight end in the draft? And then also, I kind of like the Keenum signing because that's a veteran that has won playoff games.
Sure,
he's going to be able to put a little pressure on Mayfield because this is a make or break year for Mayfield in my
100%, 100%.
If he falls on his face, he's out. So, I mean, I really like how they brought him in to try to push him. I don't like Mayfield that much, but there was a couple things he did last year. I thought he at least tried to take some of the blame off Beckham and off some other guys as the season went on and try to put him on himself. So at least he's trying to be a leader. But, I mean, the off-the-field stuff, about the Cheesecake Factory stuff, I think this could be the last year of Baker.
Oh, and then to finish out the division, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they placed the franchise tag on edge rusher Bud Dupree. They bring in someone who you know a little bit, tight end Erik Ebron, 2-year, $12 million deal. The Watt brothers, a couple of them will be teaming up in Pittsburgh with Derek Watt signing a 3-year deal. Chris Wormley, defensive tackle, was acquired in a trade. And then with Wisniewski, offensive lineman, on a 2-year deal.
I love the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. You're getting a Hall of Fame quarterback back in Big Ben. The best defense in the league last year.
I don't know how they did it last year. It was unbelievable. They just kept finding ways to stay competitive, you know.
And now you're adding Erik Ebron, who's a guy when you're inside the opponent's 5 who can go up and win a jump ball because they really didn't have that last year. And when Big Ben's been the quarterback, the offense is always kind of funneled through the running back. Have it be Le'Veon Bell. Couple years ago when he was healthy, Connor. I expect Connor to have a huge year this year. I actually got the Steelers at basically 34-1 to win it all next year. I mean, Big Ben coming back. They're going to move Juju more into the slot and not to the outside. We're going to have some mismatches. Add in another weapon with Ebron and that defense. I'm all in on Pittsburgh, man.
Erik's high on the Steelers. We move from the AFC North, 2 divisions left to speak about. We'll go to the AFC East, and we're going to see a Buffalo Bills team that feels like they're trying to go all in right now. They still might need a little here and there, a piece or two, but they agree to terms on a 3-year deal with Mario Addison on the edge. Vernon Butler, defensive tackle, signs with the Bills on a 2-year deal. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver, acquired in a trade with the Vikings in exchange for a 1st-round pick, 5th-round pick, 6th-round pick, and 2021 for a 4th round. E.J. Gaines, cornerback, 1-year deal. Quentin Jefferson, defensive end, signs with the Bills. Backup QB Sean Mannion. Josh Norman agrees on terms of a 1-year deal. And Quentin Spain, offensive guard, 3-year, $15 million contract. So a team that wasn't far away. They were competitive last year. They have a good defense. They have a lot of things. But I think with all these moves, no matter what, it's still going to always come down to Allen, right?
Is he accurate?
Yeah.
That's the question. And with a player like Diggs, you get a player that can run every route in the route tree. He can do everything. But is Allen going to be able to get him the ball in
I
the
could
right
see
spot.
Diggs getting a little mad at a couple balls flying over his head, right? Like, and he's getting a little upset on the sideline.
Totally upset. And then I also don't know if they're going to add another running back because the big rumor was Gordon going there. I personally love Singletary.
Yep.
I love that kid. So I don't know if they're going to add another running back. The also another key is Duke Williams, that guy on the outside, the wide receiver from Auburn. He's big. He's physical. He can win the jump ball inside the 5. I really like him for next year. But you're right. Everything comes down to Allen. Is he going to be accurate enough to make the throws?
And a team who, I mean, I got to give it up for this team able to win 5 games last year. I think Flores just did an unbelievable job coaching them. The first couple of weeks we were all laughing and joking, talking about this Miami Dolphins team as being an 0-16 team and maybe the worst team in NFL history with some of their point differentials the first couple of weeks and how bad they looked. And man, he got a lot of these players to really buy in. And now you make some moves and you kind of shore up some spots here. You re-sign safety Adrian Colbert. You signed a 3-year deal offensive tackle Erik Flowers, Grugier Hill, your linebacker. You signed a linebacker, bring in Jordan Howard, running back, 2-year $10 million deal. Byron Jones, cornerback, 5-year $82 million deal. Another offensive lineman with Ted Karras. Shaq Lawson on the edge, 3 years, 30. Emmanuel Ogba on the edge, 2 years, 15. Lendon Roberts, linebacker, and Kyle Van Noy, linebacker, 4-year, $51 million. So they spent a lot of money here for a team that a lot of people just a year ago thought were, a tanking team rebuilding. They feel good about where they are.
They have 14 picks too.
Yeah.
So they're going to be a really interesting team of youth and experience, but it all comes down to who's under center.
Yep.
For me, I am not a Tua guy. I hate his mechanics. Too many injuries for me to even think about him being a quarterback. And I don't know, are they going to use that 5th round pick, take an offensive lineman? Then they have the Steelers pick. Are they going to, that's 25th. Are they going to package that another pick to move up and then take a Herbert? Or are they just going to run out with Fitzpatrick? I really don't know what they're going to do inside the quarterback, but I'm kind of in a holding pattern with them right now. Their over-under is at 6 for wins. If they have someone besides Tua under center, I'm going to take the over. That's kind of my strategy with them.
Going to be a really weird-looking New England Patriots team this year with no Tom Brady, and even the one today, no Gostkowski. 2 players that have just been there, it seems like forever, won't be there in the locker room this year. The Patriots do bring in defensive tackle Bo Allen, wide receiver Damiere Byrd, quarterback backup QB Brian Hoyer, who, you know what, he might be the starter right now with what's on the roster. Safety Devin McCourty, safety Adrian Phillips, Matthew Slater, 2-year extension, offensive guard Joe Thuney, and then Vital, fullback. So the Patriots, what's this team going to look like this year with no Brady?
I just don't know what their plan is. I have no idea what they're trying to do, what their plan is. I heard someone make an interesting comment to me. I was talking to one of my friends, and the Patriots are notorious for wanting to do their own physicals on players. What if they're just kind of waiting this out and just like, hey, we like you, but we want to do our own physical on you? Because they're not someone that takes a risk on people. So I kind of think that's what they may be doing. But that's the only thing I could think of. I just don't know what their plan is.
Yeah, it's going to be a different team this year. No doubt about it. We'll see how good Belichick is. Yeah, I
love the Phillips signing. I think he's going to be a game changer on defense. I mean, that's the one sign I was like, oh, I like that one a lot, but I just no idea what the plan is. The
Jets signed center guard Josh Andrews, cornerback Pierre Desir, George Fant, tackle, edge rusher on the Jenkins, Alex Lewis guard, Connor McGovern center, Patrick Onwuasor linebacker, Brashad Perryman a wide receiver to help Sam Darnold a little bit, cornerback Brian Poole, and then offensive line Greg Van Roten. Where do you stand with the Jets?
I think Perryman is going to be the wide receiver 1, but I'm not a Gase guy. I'm not a Darnold guy, and I think it's going to be a long year in New York.
Yeah, I'm not a Gase guy, and you know what? Like, people would just assume that being a USC guy, I'm a Darnold guy, and I've never really been as high as a lot of people are on him. I think We'll see. He turns the ball over a lot. I'm not quite sure with his decision making all the time. I like him. He's a gamer. I think the players around him like him, and I think he can rally the troops sometimes. But can he just hold on to the ball enough in the NFL to be successful? So now we're going to our final division, and we are to the AFC South. And we'll start the AFC South with the Houston Texans. Talk about a team who's kind of been laughed at a little bit. I'm going to bring on Chad Cooper, who is out in the area, and we're going to focus a lot on Houston when we talk wrestling a little bit too. But just quickly, I mean, I don't love really anything that Houston has done.
I have no idea what they're doing. Like, did they even offer any Hopkins to anyone else? The Patriots, I think, have like 13 picks. You're telling me the Patriots wouldn't offer a first and a third for Hopkins, or first and a fourth? It's like he was like, "Hey, we're just going to send you here. This is the first offer we got. This is where you're going." So I have no idea. I've never been a Bill O'Brien guy, and I'm surprised that the ownership, after them blowing that lead the way they did, decided to keep him on. There's certain guys that just shouldn't be in charge of player personnel, and O'Brien's showing that he's one of them.
Yep. And
they took on all of David Johnson's contract too. I mean, he's getting $11.5 million a year. $11.5 million a year. The only thing is O'Brien's not going to want to look like an idiot, so it wouldn't surprise me if he forces the ball to Johnson a lot this year, just to kind of say, hey,
this is why we got him. Yeah, we're going to build our offense around him. So they bring in Cobb, Fairbairn, Fells, Philip Gaines, Vernon Hargraves, David Johnson, A.J. McCarron, Eric Murray, Brent Volley, Bradley Roby, and Jalen Watkins. But I don't love what we're doing with them, and I'll break them down a little bit more with Chad a little later on. So inside the same division, a team that's going to look different with a new man behind center. And you know what? They didn't make a ton of moves, but the moves they made are all pretty good and make sense, right? You bring in Phillip Rivers, whether you like him or not. I think you give a little more of a sure quarterback back there. DeForest Buckner acquired via trade with the 49ers, and then offensive tackle Anthony Costanzo and offensive line LaRaven Clark. So the Colts were good last year, and then it felt early, and they lost a couple of games they probably shouldn't have lost. And then when Brissett got a little bit banged up, he wasn't the same down the stretch. This is a team that's to me is a little bit interesting.
I love them. I locked in over 8.5 wins on them. That was my biggest bet so far, over 8.5. You bring in Buckner, and the main thing Buckner is going to do is he's going to free up Leonard on the outside. That's going to be the main thing. And Buckner is basically a younger Campbell. He can stop the run. He can get to the quarterback, and that's going to take pressure off a younger secondary. So I love that move. Granted, you give up the 13th pick, but you're not going to get a player of Buckner's level at the 13th pick. And then you bring in Phillip Rivers, who in my eyes is a slight upgrade over Brissett.
Yep.
And he's going to have a better offensive line. Immediately upgrade Nyheim Hines is going to be like Eckler was last year in the Chargers offense. A lot of checkdowns to him. I was really hoping that Perryman would go here just to give them a physical wide receiver that can play the underneath. But they're definitely going to have to get another wide receiver just because.
Yes, they need another.
T.Y.'s older. Campbell's always already hurt. They need another weapon for me to bite in that they can win the Super Bowl. But with what everyone else is doing in that division, they're, in my eyes, 8.5 is a no-brainer. They're the team to beat in that division, hands down.
Yeah, because the next team we'll talk about, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they feel like they're rebuilding because they trade Foles, so they're going all in on Minshew right now, at least at the moment. They bring in Denard, or Queez Denard, 3-year, $13.5 million deal. Tight end Tyler Eifert, who he can catch the ball when he's healthy, but he's been decimated by injury through his career. Defensive lineman Rodney Gunter, cornerback Rashad Melvin, edge rusher Ngakwe, linebacker Joe Schobert, Tyler Shatley, center guard, and then defensive tackle Al Woods.
I got 3 words for you, my friend. Sucking for Lawrence. That's all I can.
They're going all in. They just look like they're going to be a bad football team this year.
They're going to be really bad. They're going to be really, really, really bad. I mean, basically, those are the 3 words I have for the Jaguars. Sucking for Lawrence.
And then we talked a little bit about this final team that we'll speak about in the NFL, who they had an unbelievable year last year. They were really, really good. It felt like things went very well for them. They started to overachieve towards the end of the year. And now the Titans bring in Vic Beasley on the edge. They placed a franchise tag on Derrick Henry, who's had a ton of carries and a ton of mileage on him over the last couple of years. Dennis Kelly, offensive tackle. Tyson Braylow, offensive line, and then Ryan Tannehill, 4-year, $118 million contract. If I would have told you 1 year ago at this moment that Tannehill would be signing a 4-year, $118 million deal, and that the Titans would have kind of picked Tannehill over Brady and some others, we would have laughed. But this team had a good run at the good end of the year, but from talking to you, I get the feeling that you're not quite as high on them having the same type of run this year.
No, I already locked in under 8.5 wins on them. You have Ryan Tannehill, who has 2 bad knees and a rotator cuff injury, and velocity on his throw was down last year. He's a game manager. Everything broke right for them last year, and they were in a lot of close games, and they got the bounces. So regression is going to come for them. Plus, you lose Conklin, which is huge. I am a huge believer in offensive line. And Derrick Henry having that season, because the offense basically ran through him, is, after all those touches, is unrealistic. And Tannehill's not a guy you can say, hey, balls on your own 20, minute left, drive us down, win the game. He can't do that. And when you watch the games last year when they're playing a team and their offensive was clicking, so the Chiefs in the playoffs game, they got that early lead. Then when the Chiefs offense started clicking, the Titans offense couldn't keep up with them because Tannehill's not that quarterback anymore. So I really think this team's going to take a immediately step backwards. And who even knows if Henry's going to sign the franchise tag? I think they would be better off spending the money on Conklin, locking up Henry on a 2 or 3 year deal, and then franchising Tannehill, or just saying, hey, good run, man. See you later. And then getting somebody else.
Erik, that was awesome, man. We went through every single team in the NFL, division by division. We talked about their moves. We talked about some of the players that have left, some of their free agent signings, the trades, some of our thoughts on them moving into the season. I really appreciate that, and we'll definitely get you back on and talk all the different sports as we will as sports come back. This was a good conversation though, because there's been a lot happening in the NFL. So I really appreciate all the work you put in, and I know the fans out there are going to love it, because I like to be able to talk when I talk about a sport or football. I like talking about as many teams as much of the games as possible, because I know that the fans and people always like to hear the game that they want to talk about, or their fan base, what someone thinks, or, not just about, for me, would it be the Lakers or the Dodgers? I love being able to talk about all the other teams. So really appreciate it, man. You did a great job.
Thanks, man. Anytime you need me.
Okay, cool. So hopefully this doesn't go on too long, this quarantine situation. But if it does, and we know that you've got some time to kill over there, we're going to keep bringing you back, and we're going to keep milking you.
Oh, sounds good, man. I got
where
plenty of time to kill.
Where can we find you on social media if we want to follow you?
Twitter, I'm at etoff21sports, and Instagram, I'm at etoff21sports_.
Great follow there on Twitter and on Instagram. So thank you, Erik. You have a nice one, buddy. We'll talk soon.
You too, man.
That was Erik talking NFL. Let's take a quick break here, hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back with more on That's What She Said. One of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast is Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, and I am here over in Glendora at Coldwell Banker with Cindy Carava. Cindy, how was 2019 for you? Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you were working on.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. 2019 was just really great. I had a great year selling homes all the way from Altadena, Arcadia, Monrovia, out to Upland and Ontario just recently. The market has been really good. We're looking forward to 2020 with an increase in home prices about 5.8% this year, opposed to last year where it was a little softer. We saw more like homes averaging about 3.5% in increase in value. It's also looking great for buyers. The interest rates right now are going to be staying under 4%. So if you've been on the fence about thinking about buying a home, now is the time to do so, with interest rates still staying low.
And you offer more services than just the buying, selling, and leasing homes. Tell us about some of the other services that you offer and what a full-service realtor really is.
So you're right, Gino. Besides me being a full-service realtor of finding properties for my clients to buy or selling their homes or finding rentals for them, I also have a plethora of resources like handyman, contractors, electricians, plumbers. I even, like I said, if you're thinking about getting a home loan, I actually work with 2 great lenders that I can recommend to anybody.
And you're all over the internet, social media, websites. Let us know some of the places where we can find you. I know I've seen some reviews on Yelp and on Zillow. Everyone always has positive things to say. Everybody hears me raving about you all the time. But where can everyone else find out information about you or contact?
Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can contact me on my website, which is www.cindycarava.com, or my email, which is cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or feel free to call or text me on my cell phone, which is 626-394-6400.
Cindy is awesome. She's one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. I promise you, you will enjoy every minute you interact with her. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate all of your support from That's What G Said podcast.
Thank you, Gino. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you to Erik for that really, really good rundown of all the NFL free agency moves. And these teams have changed so much already. It generally just doesn't happen like this in football. So this season, going to be a lot of new faces and a lot of new places. Next up, interview with Chad Cooper. Now, we recorded this on Thursday, and we recorded this right before the news came out that Roman Reigns, we talk a lot of wrestling. We talk the East Houston Texans first. We break down some of their moves. We talk about the division a little bit, and then we move into wrestling. We talk about All Elite Wrestling, and then we talk WWE and Wrestlemania. But the news came out that Roman Reigns is out of WrestleMania 36. Pro Wrestling Sheet has learned Roman Reigns will not be part of the Universal Championship match. Roman Reigns did not feel comfortable doing anything right now because he is recently recovering from leukemia and he didn't want to risk his health with everything going on with the virus. Those who have, not the best of health are obviously more prone and more likely to get this, and then, it's just not going to be good. So Roman didn't want to get involved in WrestleMania because of this, even if it's not going to be with the fans. It's just in a match one-on-one, probably not the greatest idea. So this will definitely change things because he was in one of the main event matches, wrestling for the Universal title against Goldberg. Now what's going to happen with Goldberg, there's a couple, different things that possibly could happen, but just the heads up that when we talked earlier on Thursday, this news had not come out yet. So we do mention the match a little bit, but it's not like we spend a whole lot of time. But just keep in mind for you wrestling fans, no Roman Reigns. So now this WrestleMania is going to really be a little different. What do they do with Goldberg? Do they kind of shoehorn him into another match? Do they have something like a match on night 1 and then the winner of that goes on to face Goldberg? So on night 2. We'll see. There'll be some options, but we'll have to keep an eye on what happens over the next week or so on SmackDown and Raw and going forward. WrestleMania next weekend. Let's get to Chad Cooper. We talk Texans. We talk wrestling. Enjoy. Well, we promised he would be back last week because we were talking some wrestling. We didn't get really the chance to talk about the Texans, so we had to bring him back to talk more wrestling and to talk about the Texans again this week. Our good buddy Chad Cooper from the Examiner, Flag. What else are you, or where else are you working with, or in chorus with right now, Chad?
A man of many hats,
Right? Yeah.
If I've got a camera, I'm in a casino, I'm in a indie wrestling match, taking photos. The Examiner newspaper, Flag Sports. I do a little bit of everything.
Okay, so what's unfortunate is that I'm reading this article from the Ringer that says the 5 teams that have more questions than answers after the first week of free agency, and one of the teams that is on this, and not really by a big surprise, is the Texans. And the headline for the the little page right up about the Texans says each Texans move is more perplexing than the last. So let's go with someone who's a big football guy. You cover football, and being right there around the Texans. Let's talk about a couple of these moves and then the overall fan base. Like, I wonder what the feelings are on some of these. First up, DeAndre Hopkins, if you were to say that he's the best wide receiver in football, nobody would really argue with you. He's on the short list when you're talking about the best. So, 3 to 5 that you want to put in the conversation, depending on whose year is a little bit better. And they end up trading DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona. You get back David Johnson. You're taking on a lot of money. So this move, first off, what were your thoughts on this move?
Well, I believe what saved the Texans from continued heartache is the coronavirus.
Yeah.
For a Monday, it dominated, the world trends was Bill O'Brien and this move. No one saw this coming. The few people that I talked to that cover the Texans in and out, still to this day cannot confirm or deny, the Michael Irvin report, a couple of days later that DeAndre had problems with Bill O'Brien. That could be true. I don't know, but it was puzzling that he was awarded the GM job after the Kansas City Chiefs playoff game debacle. Let's not forget they were up big in that playoff game. Now, I'm not saying the Texans were going to go on and go to the Super Bowl and win it, but man, that sure does look bad. And how Kansas City goes on and win the Super Bowl, and you have them down big in their own yard. And many thought, hey, okay, this is an out. Brian's out of here. What did the Texans do? We're going to officially give Bill O'Brien the GM job.
We're going to go the opposite way.
Yeah. It's puzzling, and the fans are very mad, and as they should be, because he's been a star from day one since he came to Houston, Texas. He's been great. There's been some times where they were hard on him, as they should, because, he carried that title as being one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL.
You expect a lot out of him. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
And he got zero help. And now he's going to go to a team with a young head coach who is an offensive-minded guy with a young quarterback who will get it going. Yes, they're in a tough division, but I think this guy, even though he's 28, 29 years old, still has, a lot of good upside. This is going to go down as one of the worst off-season moves in Houston franchise history. Not just football, but baseball, basketball as well.
So then, not long after this, one of the next moves that they make is they sign slot receiver Randall Cobb, 3 years, $27 million contract, $18+ million guaranteed. And I mean, last year he was paid $5 million on a 1-year deal from Dallas. He was pretty good, but if you're just looking at his numbers, they're not anything incredible. They're certainly not like number one wide receiver type or whatever. So this move next is the one it's like, not only do you get rid of Hopkins, okay, so now you got to go find someone else to fill that spot. And maybe it's not even someone right now. Maybe you're going to say, okay, we're looking to a really deep draft of wide receivers, and maybe we can maybe take a couple early on and hope that one of them hits, whatever it is. But this doesn't seem like the next, like the move to follow the Hopkins move. This doesn't feel like a very good one either.
No, because he's older, and then you're going to guarantee him money until he's 32, 33 years old. And he had a decent season in Dallas.
Okay,
as you
sure.
said, 50-something catches, 700-800 yards, just a couple of touchdowns. But is he going to be your number one guy? Because, look, Will Fuller is on this roster. We know this guy had some talent, but guess what? The last 2 seasons, he's only played in 18 games.
It's never there. No.
He's just not. And this is one of the, I remember talking to you last summer. We were talking about the Houston Texans, that Will Fuller was the guy.
The X factor,
Yeah.
Like he's the key. And now, and it's even worse now when you're going to have to really, really depend on him and Cobb. Like these are the two that you're going to be depending on. Like it still seems like you're going to be a skill player or two, another pass catcher or two short there.
Yeah, and I think they're still open for wide receiver.
Sure.
And that's why I thought Emmanuel Sanders would be a perfect fit, and they let that go by. And, David Johnson, you're paying him $11-12 million now. They're thinking maybe he can go back to his 2016 season when 1,200 yards, 20 touchdowns, but then he's injury riddled. He missed most of the season because of a wrist injury.
That feels like forever ago, right?
Yeah, and is he going to be the number one back? I thought you had Duke Johnson back there. I thought you had, you're filled with running backs, and yeah, he's going to catch a lot of balls out of the backfield because they've taught Deshaun Watson not to run as much, to throw that out and use the running back. But I still think they're a pass rusher away. They're certainly not going to go Clowney, even though he's available. That's not going to happen. And if you look at the wide receivers who are available, sir, there's not any out there that are worth anything. And guess what? You don't have a first-round draft pick.
No top picks. Yeah, you're
Sorry,
right.
Not happening. So
you're right. Yeah.
Oh boy,
this is what's happened in previous years for not really having, like you talked about, like not really having the good line of like, okay, this is what the leadership looks like here. This, we've got president, GM, down all the way down. It was very like fuzzy. It was fogged. It was muddy. It was like who was making the decisions, who was making the ultimate decisions up until recently. Now we know it's O'Brien, and these decisions. I mean, and even one of the other ones where DB Eric Murray, who
sure.
Like he's kind of like a mixed. This is one that could kind of go either way. It's like seems like a lot for someone that the Chiefs were willing to get rid of. The Hopkins one is probably the one that that people will realize the most. But it just didn't feel like I didn't love any of the moves that I've seen from Houston so far in the offseason.
No, and bringing in Murray, he had a decent season, I think, for the Cleveland Browns. But I think Houston kind of got burned with Honey Badger a little bit. Yeah, he's that name. He just didn't have a very good stint in Houston. I don't think he liked this defensive scheme that Romeo Crennel does. Maybe Murray does. I know they signed a defensive back from the Chargers, but has ACL issues. They bring Vernon Hargraves back. He was injured. I think he started 2 games for Houston last year. So it's ugly for the Texans. And if you look at the division, Jacksonville gave up a lot of people. But look how many draft picks are in their back pocket right now. Those guys are loaded for future talent. Loaded.
And you mentioned Jacksonville a little bit. So they're a team that feels like they're kind of maybe going to tank kind of really rebuild because they traded off Foles, they traded off a couple of their defensive pieces, and it looks like they're going to give the reins to Minshew, which is fine. Like Minshew did a good job. Minshew did a respectable job, but they just don't feel like a team that's going all in. And then the kind of the opposite from the other two teams. But first on Jacksonville, they're probably going to be pretty bad this year.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the other two teams in the division, strange. So Tennessee was really good at the end of the year, and when they made the change to Tannehill. Can you imagine if we were talking like a year ago, saying that Tannehill was going to get the kind of contract that he got just a year ago? Right,
$100 million quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, and like basically they had the opportunity to go out and get a couple of these other quarterbacks because, I mean, there were so many quarterbacks that moved around, and they seemed like Tannehill was their no doubt about it choice. So it's like if you would have said they had the opportunity to maybe bring in a Tom Brady or a Rivers or a Bridgewater or someone, and they're going, you know what, we like Tannehill, we're gonna stick with him, and they tag Henry, so they're going to just try to roll back the same team that had a lot of good success toward the end of the season for the most part, and they're going to hope that maybe with the full slate that they'll be good. But things went really, really well for them. It's hard in the NFL for things to go that well, again, like towards the end of the season.
Yes.
But I don't know, what do you think about the Titans?
I like Henry. I didn't buy into them. I know that was the hype, and that they were the hot team. Even though Kansas City was, putting up all these points, I said, well, Tennessee is probably, there was a lot of people who lost a lot of money on the Tennessee Titans because I knew a lot of people who bet big money straight up in that Kansas City game, and they just got shut down. And look, Henry's a stud. He is. Year in, year out, he's a year older. Running back years are kind of like dog years.
Yeah,
these knees and these feet, man. If
I'm a little worried. To him, yeah. I don't love it's just, I don't know. It feels like I didn't feel like this group could get it all the way done, right? It still felt to me like they were a good team that I wouldn't have been shocked if they could have beaten anyone in a one-game situation, but I never was sure that they could win maybe like 3 or 4 of these big playoff games in a row if they had to. And I don't know, going all in with this same group, as you mentioned, one of these seasons or at some point, Henry it's gonna start to weigh on him. What he's done the last couple years. I mean, he has been incredible. He runs right at you. He's not like secretive about what he's gonna do. It's just like, I'm coming. Try to get me. You can't. These hits have got to start to add up at some point. So I'm a little worried about them. I think they'll be. They're not going to be a bad team, I don't think, but I'm not sure if they're going to be, like a perennial playoff team with these two guys locked up. So even with that, like, the division still feels kind of wide open, because the Colts might be in the driver's seat right now, even with Phillip Rivers, who wasn't great last year, but he might be in a better spot here to just, if he doesn't make as many mistakes. And that should still probably be a little bit of an upgrade over what the Colts had for, probably half of the year last year. So the division kind of seems weird. What do you think about the Colts?
Yeah, changing scenery once you've been somewhere for most of your career, I mean, it's 50-50. It's either really, really good for you or it really doesn't work out. And from everything that I hear and I read is they're very high on him. They think this changes the scenery. They think, with this coaching staff and with some of these tools and some of these playmakers that the Colts have, that they're ready to contend. And, if they can get off to a fast start, it was kind of like one year they're 4-0, 5-0, and then one year they're 1-4.
Yep.
If they can get off to a faster start in this division and Tennessee comes back to earth a little bit, we know Jacksonville is not going to scare the pants off of anybody. And the Texans, they can be beat. I think the Colts have as good a shot as Tennessee and Houston to distill this division.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of familiarity too with Rivers and some of the coaching staff there.
Sure.
They've known each other in a lot of the scheme. So
and he's got a lot to prove, Gino.
He does. He does. No, you're right.
So I think he's going to put up a lot of yards, and I think I'm looking for big things.
He still wants to win. He's never won.
Absolutely.
That's what we got to remember. He's not like someone, and even Brady. Brady's obviously still motivated, but like when you win, he's not like someone who's won a few times and he's just moving to move. Like he's got a fan. Like he wouldn't be going somewhere else and leaving and with his family and everything, like unless he wanted to win and felt like he had a big shot too. So this feels like it could be a pretty good marriage as long as he stays healthy and they go well, because like you said, there's nothing that terrifies you now in this division. So fun. It's been a fun first couple weeks for NFL free agency. Like we just rarely see this many big name players moving teams.
No, and I think we really needed it. There's no sports, right?
You're right. God, it's been great.
I know you're going to have some people, probably frown on me for saying this, but the true religion in the United States of America has to be sports, right? No, people miss church all the time. I was raised in Southern Baptist. My dad was a deacon. Couldn't say certain things around him, but man, if you miss church, most churches in the United States are closed now. They're having to do it online. Man, when you miss that first NFL game and that first NBA game and that first Major League Baseball game.
Yeah, today was supposed to be opening day. We're recording this like Thursday evening, and it's just, it's
isn't sports, probably pro and pro sports, the true religion of this country, man. But this was much needed, at least for a couple of days.
Some normalcy, right?
Yeah,
it just gives you like a shot of normalcy back in the arm. Like we're able to talk about the teams and what the teams need, and we're just able to kind of escape it. Yes, look forward to as the season's coming forward, or maybe in the case of some of these teams that didn't do a whole lot, start scratching, your head. Well, we had a couple as we transition over. Let's talk some wrestling. We had AEW Dynamite now, so on Wednesday night, and it's been a couple weeks now with WWE and All Elite Wrestling running these shows with no one in the audience. So in this one, we had Cody and Kenny Omega kind of back and forth on commentary with Tony Schiavone. And, I thought it was a pretty fun show. We had Cody, Jimmy Havoc at the beginning, Darby Allin, Kip Sabian, of those two matches, and just kind of overall, I mean, Darby to me is a star in the making. I do think he just kind of has that it factor, right? That charisma. He seems like he's going to be a big, big star.
Yeah, there was some comparisons to this, and I don't know if it's fair to Darby or not, but especially on social media, but comparing him to a young Sting,
yep.
Just the guy can fly around, but absolutely, this guy needs to be on TV every week. I was a fan of him in the Indies, following him. I like Kip Sabian. I mean, he's not a star, but he's a good worker. I like that match. It really wasn't a bit. I don't like where kind of where they're going with Mox and Jake Hager. I just think Mox needs somebody else other than the Inner Circle. I've just never been when I see Jake Hager, I just want to go, we the people
swagger. They've done a better job in AEW of building him up, but he's just so hard to think of as. He's never a guy that's really on the promo guy. He's not. He doesn't have much personality. So he's just like, in this day and age, you have to have a little personality, or you have to be the absolute best worker. And he's just like a pretty good worker, a big guy, a good hand. I think he's good in his role, but I kind of agree with you. Like, as a challenger for the world title, it kind of feels a little flat.
It is, and maybe, Mox needs this after this big program with Jericho, kind of like a transition feud.
Maybe a TV program for a little while or something.
And they keep saying Jake's this big MMA monster. No, you fought in Bellator once or twice. It's jobbers. Let's ease off of that. I thought it was an okay show this past week. I didn't think it was as good as the previous week, but
I agree.
What did you think about the promo and the vignettes with Brody Lee,
where he was
taking jabs
supposed to be the Vince McMahon? Yeah. We were sitting there. You know what? I laughed. I thought it was funny. I like Brody Lee, the former Luke Harper, quite a bit. I think he's very talented. The only thing that I think is a little strange is it just felt different, a lot different from the first week of like who is he? You know what I mean? So I guess I want to see what the next week is and where they're going, because I just was like trying to figure out, okay, week one, he comes in, he's kind of this, like badass kind of mythical. And then the next week he's in a suit and he's playing Vince McMahon almost,
Sure.
So I'm willing to give them a little time with him to give him the build that they want, to kind of portray him how they want. It's funny though. I like anytime they take a shot, but sometimes I'm glad they haven't been doing it as much. I don't think it's always great when it gets fun sometimes when they go back and forth with each other, but sometimes you got to be like how WWE is and maybe act like the other one doesn't exist.
Sure.
Yeah. But anytime they get a reference to a WWE thing, I always do get a good chuckle there. And then we had we had a pretty good match, Omega versus Sammy Guevara. Sure. I will say, and this is Cody was pretty fun on commentary in a couple spots. He made a couple. I wasn't never usually as high on Cody. He's really done a great job in the last couple years, just impressing me with his work overall, his promo skills. He's just gotten a lot better overall. Everything he's done with this company and stuff, he's done a great job. He said something in the Kip Sabian Darby Allin match about how like these guys are like the freshmen on the varsity team, they got a bunch of talent, but you could tell they're just like a little bit, there's something, they're a step or two away, they're young, which I thought was kind of a fun reference. And then they were really talking during the Kenny and Sammy match about how Sammy, the Inner Circle stuff, and it's okay, and Jericho does a good job, obviously he's super talented and entertaining, but it's done a really great thing for Sammy. He feels like he's really, I think of everyone that's been involved with that, with the Inner Circle and stuff, he's really been elevated. His personality's come out, and we were able to see him in a really nice match here against Kenny.
Yeah, and Sammy was a big hot commodity on the Texas independent scene. I was able to see him several times in person. Russell Circus, he was in Austin multiple times, and this guy, just everything he did, the fans ate it up, and that was one of the places I thought was a good fit to put him in with the Inner Circle and just not let him flop around and kind of get lost in the mix as a smaller kind of cruiserweight. And then these cue cards when, just took off on a mind of its own. And he is 100% another star, and AEW's got to keep this kid on their roster because he could go anywhere and be a star.
Yeah. And then, and then just kind of a side note, you've probably seen the videos online of MJF floating around all week where he's singing. Yeah, he's just like an incredible singer too, which is great. And MJF on Twitter just like, so you guys are all just finding out that I'm amazing at everything in life, which is just great. That was a side note, but funny because there's just the one thing I do like about AEW, and is if they just are able to, sounds weird, but just stay on TV for a while. Like in another year, the guys like Darby Allin and Sammy and MJF, after having been on TV for a full year and like people finally like really knowing you, knowing who you are on like a national level, these guys have the opportunity to be really, really big stars, you know?
Yeah. And they end the show with two older guys.
Yeah.
You got a 45-year-old Matt Hardy. You got nearly 50 Chris Jericho. And look, I'm one of the biggest Hardy fans in the world. I popped at WrestleMania 2 years ago when they came out and won those titles. I was disappointed that Impact, whoever was running it at the time, would not let the broken/woken Matt Hardy. Do we need that gimmick from him now?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I don't know if we do or not.
Because it's not hot. That's the problem.
No,
is that
it's not.
If this happened on the heels of leaving TNA, like right when he went to WWE, then I think it would hit a little bit more. And also, I think it's one of those things that would definitely, they're obviously in a bad spot, but it would hit much better with a crowd.
Oh,
with the crowd chanting the deletes and going back and forth, and the crowd like kind of chanting against Jericho, who's one of the best, like antagonizing them. It would be a whole lot of fun. But it just like it felt like we had close the show with Matt Hardy versus Chris Jericho, their stare down, and Matt Hardy is like teleporting all through the
and I'll say this, that what Jericho was doing with Vanguard 1
with the
going back and forth, that was you don't get any better than that.
It was hilarious.
Was great. It was
hilarious. And that was so a positive in that they were saying like they were able to bring Vanguard 1 in because there were no people. You know what I mean?
Sure,
like that would have been something that would have
true.
been hard to have in a full arena with a bunch of people. I don't even know if they're allowed with it, but it was funny. We saw Matt Hardy kind of get broken Matt Hardy. He kind of mentioned that he's not really aligned with the Elite, but he just owed them a favor and they brought him back. So we'll see what the future has for them. But I got to applaud them and WWE as we'll transition over to WWE for right now. Like you said, it's nice to have some normalcy. So at least we're able to sit down for a couple hours, watch these shows, critique the shows like we like, talk about what we think is fun, talk about what we think stinks. It does kind of give us a little something to at least continue to look forward to right now at this kind of strange time in the world.
Yeah, with or without fans. I know some of the, WWE, you can see some of the guys who are able to come in on Monday night and on Friday nights, and some who are not able to because they're showing, older matches, in which that's like, ESPN, I think this weekend is showing WrestleMania, 32, one of those, 30, 31, 32s this weekend. But yeah, just for a couple of hours. And, there hasn't been as much fighting on social media with AEW and WWE Universe fans. So it's actually been a plus.
Yeah, it is. It's been kind of a little more positive. People are just enjoying what they're giving us. So I guess in the last week or so on the WWE side, we found some things out. First of all, we saw Gronkowski come out on SmackDown and that was just Gronk being Gronk, man. Just goofy strut dancing down to the ring, just like super awkward and uncomfortable stuff with Mojo, but just like bro stuff that we kind of just laugh at, and so it looks like Elias is going to face King Corbin at WrestleMania, but it looks like maybe one of Gronk's first, I don't know if it's going to be a feud or interaction or whatever they're going to be doing with him, it may be involving Corbin.
Yeah, and I like that. Corbin had a little stint in the NFL, and Corbin is a great heel, and he can get you over. So no problems with that at all.
Yeah, it's good. Automatic. He's one of the best heels and like true heels in wrestling. It's a really good spot to start if you're going to do that. And I'm sure Mojo will have plenty of interaction there. So what we're finding out now is that there's going to be some like even more serious lockdowns in Florida coming up, and so WWE is doing. It's actually a pretty smart thing. They have all the talent around right now. So what they're doing is they're just filming as much as they can. They're basically filming all of WrestleMania, and they're filming like the next couple of weeks worth of TV shows. I think even the the show or two or some of the stuff immediately following WrestleMania. So they're basically taking advantage of having a healthy crew right now. And then it's going to be time to basically let these guys and gals and everybody go back home to their family. Because from what I've heard, they're almost like a lot of the crew has been kind of quarantined in a hotel or like in one type spot. And they're just kind of, filming TV, filming all these matches, filming some promos and stuff at the Performance Center, right?
Yeah, and that's the one thing we talked about last time when I was on your podcast. Who could avoid getting this? Because we know a lot of them have probably been tested, but getting it done now, and I know sooner or later. And I am the biggest anti-spoiler person. I don't want to read, I'll still watch Impact. I see all the tweets, here are the results. I don't like reading that. I want to watch it live, and I know they're going to be out there. I just hope that a lot of people, give it a chance, stay away from it, and just let WrestleMania and, go over these 2 days without, everyone knowing every result. And they're definitely doing the right thing. Get everything taped. And I think maybe the same with NXT. I think they're going to, book some NXT takeover matches and tape them this week and show them over the next couple of Wednesdays. So that's going to be fun too, because there was a lot of matches on that card that I was looking forward to, and I'm glad they're putting them on Wednesday nights. And
so with the 2 nights now, they should. What they're doing is there were a couple kind of random matches that were thrown on. I think they were just like, hey, you know what? We have 2 people here at the Performance Center right now. Like, let's tape this match. We'll throw it on WrestleMania. We've added these Street Profits versus Andrade and Garza for the tag team titles, for the Raw tag team titles. They've added Aleister Black versus Bobby Lashley, which, that can be a good match if those 2 guys get to go for a little while, just in a singles match. Elias versus King Corbin. We're probably going to have some kind of an Otis versus Dolph Ziggler. Then the women's tag, maybe Kabuki Warriors, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. And then, hey, the one that I'm kind of getting excited for, I'm assuming we're going to see Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan. There's a stipulation coming up on SmackDown to where Drew Gulak's involved. This just kind of feels like I'm sure Daniel Bryan loves this, like being involved with these workers. He probably feels like this is something that he probably is telling Vince or whoever, like, hey, let me work with Sami and Drew and Cesaro and Nakamura. Like, he loves this group and these matches that he's able to have with these guys.
Yeah, and I know the word is not used a lot in WWE now because it's superstars, but man, those guys can wrestle. That match at Royal Rumble that Daniel Bryan and Drew put together, that was an amazing match. Or no, Elimination Chamber. Excuse me, Elimination Chamber. That was an amazing match. We all know Sami can go. So yeah, this has the makings of a very, very good match. I'm excited about this program.
Yeah. So we look up and down, and what they should be able to do is, for the most part, I'm just assuming that. Do you think it'll be more of like a, maybe like NXT and some undercard matches one night, or do you think they'll try to actually spread it out and do 2 nights where it's like, one title match on each side, maybe U.S. title here or in IC on this one, like women's titles matches split up. Do you think it'll be like a true 2-night show with main events on each night, or more of like a night and a B night?
Man, I would love to see it split up. I'd love to see it even out.
Because it makes sense. You could do it pretty well. You like I actually was reading. It was let me see. It's Bleacher Report, and they did like what they would do. And so here's kind of what they would do on night 1. They would have it be Aleister Black, Bobby Lashley, Otis, Dolph Ziggler, Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins. You got the Raw Tag Team Championship match, the Women's Tag Team Championship match, Bray Wyatt, Cena, Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler, and Goldberg Roman. So that's one night. You get with that. You get half of the matches, and then you got a night 2 that still looks pretty good, where you'll have Sami Zayn versus Daniel Bryan, Elias versus Corbin. You have Edge versus Randy Orton. You have the SmackDown Tag Team Championship match, which will be Miz and Morrison versus either the New Day or the Usos. You got the SmackDown Women's title, which I believe they said Dana Brooke is now out of that because she's sick.
Right.
They don't know what, but they just want to be cautious with her. And then it would be AJ Styles, Undertaker, Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte, and then Brock Drew. Like, that's a good split. It could be, obviously a few matches here and there different, but something like that to me feels a lot better than just maybe like an A night and a B night.
And the one good thing about taping these matches, once they see everything And in post-production, you might be able to put certain matches on this night, and we go, why is this match on this night? And go, oh, now I'll see why this match was on this night. So I think it actually will work out in their favor.
I agree.
Once they get everything taped and see, and they can do an even out type deal, and not where you just have all the big names on Sunday night.
So this is going to be just a completely different WrestleMania than we're used to, because and it could go either way, right? Like, I don't think, knowing Vince, knowing that they're going to be one of the only things out there going, I don't think they're going to try to half-ass this, right? So with a couple weeks, or a week and a half, 2 weeks after everything's filmed, to put things together, to maybe redo some segments or promos or anything that they felt like didn't go well. If they didn't like a match, they could do it over again, even so. I'm starting to kind of expect a little bit more, a good amount out of this Mania, even without the crowd. I think it still should be fun, and I'm just kind of looking forward to it, how different it's going to be.
Yeah. Some of these guys will not be able to feed off the crowd, and some of these guys will not get, heat off the crowd, and all of your, when you get a guy in the ring or a girl in the ring and they're struggling and they can get some heat with the crowd, you're not going to be able to get that. So they're going to have to bring their A game for all of this, because you're not going to have a chance. If you mess up, you're not going to have a chance to build heat with the crowd or with somebody else. Anything negative, you're going to have to cover it up, because there's no one there, and all emphasis and focus is on what's happening inside that ring. So I expect nothing but A+ effort by all the men and women on that WWE roster.
Yes, yeah, it's just a different time in the world of wrestling. It's at least it's nice that we still have something going. It's been good that nothing has happened. None of the wrestlers that we've heard or anything coronavirus coming out of NXT or the Performance Center so far. So hopefully they get everything done. And if they do, and they get these shows done, then they did a really good job, and they did a smart thing by taking advantage of having everybody in one spot and getting at least a couple of weeks to maybe even a month of TV all set up. So okay, Coop, before I let you go, I didn't even prepare you for this, but I got to put you on the spot. So we talk wrestling, we talk football. Give me a TV show or a movie or something that you're binging right now. What have you been watching and doing, passing your time with a little bit through this time?
Well, see, I'm not a very big Netflix guy.
Okay.
I don't have Netflix. Okay. I don't have Hulu. I'm an old school, because I'm going a lot. I'm old school cable. But what I love to watch, man, I love American Pickers. I like these two guys that go out.
Frankie, baby. Oh, yeah. Mike and Frank.
They go out. It's like Laurel and Hardy, and they go out and they do fun things. I could watch replays of that, and I've seen most of them. I love that. I love Pawn Stars. I love The Office. So I've been watching a lot of that, because they're showing a lot of that. So yeah, that's what I'm stuck on.
Some great choices there. Yeah, I love me some Pickers. Those guys are a ton of fun. And you know what? You don't even you have a laugh, but then you learn something too. You come out of that, and some weird fact about some old artifact from the 1920s. So yeah,
sure,
it's
just so much better than the Storage Wars, right?
Yeah.
On A&E, I can go with Pickers all day long. Man.
Yeah,
that's
I used to sit there and roll through their the block that they would have, and it would be Pickers, Pawn Stars. They would have the old one, Counting Cars would be on there.
Too, Swap People, you name it, I'm watching it. Man.
Oh yeah, so that's fun. Chad Cooper, give us your plugs again. Let us know where we can find you online and some of the stuff you're working on.
Yeah, man, I live on Twitter and Instagram. Both handles are the same, at the Chad Cooper, and whatever I have, I'll post it on those two.
Coopaloop, my man, thank you so much. You have a nice weekend, and we'll talk again real soon.
Stay safe, Gino.
Okay, you too. That is our good friend Chad Cooper. You heard all the ways you can follow. Thank you, Chad. Good buddy Chad Cooper. We can hit on everything with Chad. We'll have him back to talk more wrestling and then football, a little, whatever we want as we continue on here. And that's what G said. Let's get your past performances out. We're going to go straight into some horse racing. It's a big day at Gulfstream Park. They're hopefully making it to Saturday because this is a huge card, a really good card, a 14 race card. It's the biggest day of their meet. It's Florida Derby Day. And I think they just are hoping that they can get through the week, through the Saturday. And it's a day where they're planning on paying out the Rainbow Pick 6. So very important day from a wagering standpoint, because we just don't know how many of these racetracks are going to continue to be able to stay open. So we've got to take advantage now while we still have some good opportunities left. Let's start in race number 1. And some of these allowance races, optional claimers, are just so good. This first race at Gulfstream on Saturday, so we're looking March 28th, I don't think there's a whole ton of speed in here. So I think we have to use Devious Charm, who I feel like she's going to be able to be right on the lead, sit close. If somebody else goes, like maybe like maybe a Take Charge Tina or someone else wants to show some speed, she can sit right there, and she should offer you some nice value. So let's use Devious Charm in the top spot, and in all of the exotics. And then I think the 5 is the one to beat. That is Zabava, who should be pretty tough in here. Let's use Second Coming, who has a nice little turf pedigree. Expecting this one to step forward on the grass. And then the 12 will also include Enjoy It While We Can, whose lone sibling won on the turf, and I think has an opportunity to at least pick up a slice here. And the post is probably more why we use underneath. So 8, 5, 1, and 12 we'll use in that opener in some of the exotics there in race number 1 at Gulfstream. Let's move along to race number 2. So that first race you can start with pick 5s. We'll give a couple looks at how we would play a pick 5, and then I'll kind of tell you how I'm going to approach the Rainbow 6 a little bit, and maybe where I'll single and how I stack up the other races. But you can kind of put your own together for the most part. We'll kind of give you the key horses throughout the card. Race number 2, the 4 is really interesting to me, Stealth. So he comes out of that Hidden Scroll race. Hidden Scroll, obviously very, very talented. So I think, you can look at that race, and this horse just didn't get out of the gate. So it's an obvious put a line right through. And he's had some issues, right? He's had some slow starts, and he doesn't have a whole ton of speed. But what's interesting about him, this feels like a really good distance for him. He's going to add the blinkers. He's going to go second start off a very long layoff. He hadn't raced from June the 23rd of 2019 until March of 2020. Now he's going to put 2 starts together. So even if he didn't really, get into the race, it's still getting a race around the track. I think he just should be a lot better today in this spot. And then you look around, I'm expecting there to be a decent amount of speed in here with, the outside couple horses with top seed, burning through gold, and then Beau Luminaire is not going to be far out of it. From the inside, you might get a little more speed from Jake Rocks, who could be forced from the rail. So looks like there's enough to set up a late rally for this one. I think the 4 is an interesting horse to use in a lot of your exotics, trying to come from off the pace. So let's use the 4. I think the 11, who sat just off and then put the speed rival away late, he was really impressive. And when you see the McGahee horses win first time out, generally they have a lot of talent, and they're going to continue to get better and better with racing under their belt. So I think when you use the 11, the 5 and the 6 both seem very logical. The 6 in particular, coming off that very long layoff, hadn't raced from October of 2018 to February of 2020, and should plenty of time in between. Comes out of a productive race, makes a lot of sense. The 5, Beau Luminaire also. So I have 4, 11, 6, 5, and slightly leaning to the 4 just because of the bigger price and one that I want to use in all the exotics. If I think there's enough versions of this race that I see that he gets the trip that would win this. Nothing really crazier outside the box in the 3rd. If you're playing early exotics, I just kind of like the obvious horses in here. The 3, Largent, who's going to sit 3rd off, and the 12, who's coming into the Chad Brown barn for the first time and coming over from France. That, to me, I don't really love anybody else in this field, so it's just kind of an obvious race if you want to play some of the multis. In race number 4, the Cutler Bay, they're going a mile on the turf course here. Vitology should be really tough. He was a step slow, and then he was asked for some speed from the outside. He ended up sitting. He was 3 deep into the turn. Then he ends up tucking in from 3rd, sits third. He's a couple lengths off. He's now in the 2 path. He gets up to second. He moved to the lead before the top of the lane. He put away a couple challenges. I thought it was a really nice effort. He kind of showed a little bit more tactical speed and kind of a new dimension from what we've seen from him. He's going to be tough in here. I know Decorated Invader is going to take a lot of money because he had a brutal trip in the Breeders' Cup. He was slow. He ended up 3 deep and in between horses. Then he was surrounded on all sides. He got shuffled back to last. He lost ground. He lost a few lengths. Then he got clearance and he had to go like 7 wide. He lost a ton of ground. It was just a tough trip. And he's beat Vitalogy before. But what's nice is that Vitalogy he has the race under his belt, so he has the right to be a little bit ahead of Decorated Invader in here. And then the other horse that I would use would be Moon Over Miami, who's Dam 1 going long on the grass, and he has some ability. And now you start to look back at his races, and maybe they're a little bit better than we think. New York Traffic has come back okay, and let's give him a shot going first time on the grass. So I have 6, 8, and 10 in here. And I wouldn't be against anyone that wanted to single Vitalogy. Decorated Invader is very, very logical, very, very live. I'm sure he's going to take money, so I want him on my tickets. And then the 8, maybe a price horse to spice things up a little bit. In race number 5, I'm going to begin with the 11, Al Mashriq. You know, he was really impressive. I thought on February the 22nd when winning, he was kind of bumped around a little bit at the start, and then he moved through in between. There were a couple other horses that also wanted to go for the lead. He won the battle of the speeds, and he started to draw off. He draws off by a length. He was challenged. He was actually headed at the top of the lane, right before the top of the lane, and then he keeps battling from the inside. He put that rival away, drawn to the outside, so if he needs to sit a little bit, maybe he can, but I think he's the one to catch in here. I look up and down. I don't know if there's anyone that's quite quick enough to go with him early. You know, maybe a horse like Squeeze a Dios or Wind of Change stretching out with the blinkers on. So I will use Wind of Change underneath in some spots. And, the 3, I feel like Network Effect is probably the one to beat. I think you can give him an excuse for his start last time out. And then prior to that, you don't really have a whole heck of a lot to knock. He was just slow away, and that was a racetrack that was really hard to make up any ground. And that race has come back, it's a good race. It was behind Maximum Security and spun to run. So you just excuse it, put a line right through. So like 11 and 3 as the top 2 in here. I kind of have them on a slightly higher tier than the rest. We'll use the 7, Wind of Change, who I mentioned I think can take a step forward, can improve a little bit, stretching out, likes the mile. The number 9, Intrepid Heart, who was a very highly regarded 3-year-old who will be making his first start as a 4-year-old. And the 10, Bourbon War, kind of same thing. He's a 4-year-old. He's already made his first start as a 4-year-old. That was on the grass. But he's one that I always kind of liked, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him jump up and win a race at a price like this. So underneath, if you want to go a little deeper in some spots, so at 11, 3, 7, 9, 10 in that 5th. Race number 6, no opinion in this race. Not going to really have any plays in a big day like Saturday. Don't feel like you have to play every race, every bet, every pick 4, every pick 5, every pick 3, everything. Let's move to the 7th race. There are 2 horses that I like in here, and not however you want to use them. Keep an eye on what the prices are. The first is the number 3. Stunning Sky, who I think, I played last time out and I thought was very live in that spot behind Cheermeister. And then Cheermeister just keeps winning races, and we're always going to keep playing against her. At least I am again going to be in here. I think she has speed, but I look at this field and think there's probably a little more speed than she has to deal with had to deal with in the races that she's been able to wire fields. So let's start with a 3, Stunning Sky, who I have along with the 7, and those are the 2. The 3 might give you a better price, better value. She got squeezed and really sawed off at the start and then ran up into a tight spot, and then she gets, stacked wide into the turn and wide all the way around, and it just was a brutal trip. So if you're going to just put a line through that race and play her off the last, this is not an easy spot, though. I still think it's worth giving her a shot at a price. Make sure you're still getting nice value on her. And in the number 7, I actually prefer the 7 in here. I like this one quite a bit. Walk in Marrakesh. She had a really nice start. Well, like her debut in in North America when it was up at Woodbine was very good. She was second in the Natolma. She was just beaten. She battled all the way around the track. And then she comes off the bench on March the 7th. She's over at Tampa. She had a good start. She's up to battle for the lead, and then she ends up taking back a little bit. She sits second. She's a couple off. She saves ground on the inside. She gets kind of shuffled back just a little bit from the inside. She was loaded at the top of the lane. She was waiting for room. She stayed inside. She had to angle around a little bit, and you know what? That was the difference between winning and finishing second. That was her first start since September. If she improves at all off that, she's going to be really, really tough in here. So I have the 7, Walk in Marrakesh, over the 3, Stunning Sky. Those are the 2 I like in race number 7. 8th race, I think no real strong love and opinion in here. The 3, Last Judgment, is going to be tough. I thought the 5, Bourbon Resolution was worth some inclusion. The 7, Jackson. Vekoma, we know, who was in the Derby. This is a multiple graded stakes winner. The price has to determine to me how he gets played here. If he's around 5-1, I'm okay with including it. I'm fine with using him in some of the exotics, but I just don't want to take a really short price on him, and he might be the type that gets overbet. So just keep an eye on the price and how you use him. Race number 9 is the race that actually kicks off the Rainbow Pick 6. So if you're out there, this is one of those times. I'm not a jackpot Pick 6 player. I will never tell you to play them except on these mandatory payout days. That's the day when it's worth playing. So put a little ticket in, even if you don't normally play the Pick 6s. Put a ticket in. It's 20. They're 20 cent. You can just play a small one and take a couple swings, and it's worth doing. In race number 9, the 2 Zoccali is going to take a lot of money and is going to be a real buzz type horse. The Newspaper of Record is the known horse in here, and she just didn't have a very good 3-year-old year. She did not take a step forward from 2 to 3. She'll probably get overbet in here, and I don't think this race shapes up very well for her. Completely against Newspaper of Record. I'm going to use the 7 on top. She took up at the start. She was towards the rear. She was 8th. She was inside. She was about 7 lengths off. She got to the outside of the 2 path. She moved in between horses. She was just full of run. I think she's going to get the kind of setup. It looks like there's a lot of other speed in here. The inside horse, Picara, has some speed. Super Escape is not exactly slow. Newspaper of Records has to be close to or right on the lead. East Moon has at least some tactical speed there. Jakarta is going to be flashing some speed. Valedictorian. So it looks like it's going to set up nicely for someone to come from off the pace. Let's use the 7. The 2 is going to get a ton of buzz. Makes a lot of sense. Zoccali should come running. I have no knocks on the 2 Zoccali. The 6 La Signare, who turns back and should have a little bit more late punch. And a long shot in here to include in some of your exotics. The 9 Angel of Mischief. I just think she's going to be a little bit better today. She might end up working out a nice trip where she can kind of fall into a good spot, maybe get the jump on some of the deeper closers and get a good trip. So 7-2-6-9 in race number 9. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on race number 10. I just don't love the race, to be honest. I do think the 7 didn't have a great trip last time out, and although she's not necessarily a win machine and she hasn't even won on the grass, she's run races good enough to win this. And what do you do with a horse like General Ruler, who Landeros is aboard, and Landeros has done very well aboard this mare, but he's 0 for 107 at the Gulfstream meet. So I just definitely not riding very well and going to be aboard one of the more logical, shorter prices in here. The 6 Mean Mary hasn't raced in a few months, but her speed makes her very dangerous. She's going to be forwardly play. So I thought 7, 12, 6, 5. The 12 to me is one that you have to use. I think she's really versatile. She has some speed to maybe get away and negotiate that outside draw. She can sit a little bit off. Has shown the ability to come from off the pace. Has been really good in her 2 starts in the U.S. So 7, 12, 6, 5, 4, 2, if you want to go a little bit deeper. I'm not a big fan of this race. I'm probably going to be spreading out in here. In race number 11, the Gulfstream Park Oaks, nothing really like too outside the box or too crazy, except I'm going to give Lake Avenue another shot back in here. She was so bad last time that to me it's just a race I have to be able to give her one more shot. If she was just second and beaten, it's almost one of those things where it's like, by her being so bad, I'm willing to give her more of an excuse this time out. If she just got beat, then I would say, okay, maybe she's not progressing. Maybe she's just not that good, and maybe that's the case. And I do think the Spice is Nice is gonna be even better in here. So she waited. Or she wanted to get to the outside early on. She was in between horses. She was just off tonalist shape. She looked as if she was done, but she really kept trying all the way. So I liked her effort. I really don't have any knocks on tonalist shape. She's one of those fillies that I keep trying to beat. And then, I thought Swiss Skydiver at Lucrezia, if you want to go a little bit deeper. So I have 4 or 5 on a tier on top, and then 9, 6, 7 if you're going a little bit deeper. And I'm sure a lot of people will be, having tonalist shape on their tickets. For me, there are some races I probably will on 1 or 2 in the rainbow, but you can't just use ABC and chalk in every race. In race number 12, Channel Cat from the rail is a bit interesting. He has some speed that he can show from time to time going long. He comes from way out of it, and maybe from the inside with Rosario, just get a little aggressive and show a little more speed, because this race does not have a whole ton of it. Zulu Alpha is obviously going to be very, very tough. I mean, what he's done in his last few starts, he really does tower over this field. The problem is he's going to be coming from way, way out of it, and he may spot some of these a few lengths and give them an early advantage. So the 2 inside horses I think are both worth using. Channel Cat, Bema's Boy, we'll include those 2 in the exotics with Zulu Alpha. You want to go a little deeper, maybe Focus Group, and then even the crazy long shot, Manny Comio, who could maybe get asked to go to the front end in here. So, maybe you can get somebody to try to steal this race without a ton of pace on paper, but they're all definitely going to have to hold off Zulu Alpha in race number 12, the Pan American. The 13th, this is one of my stronger plays of the day, and this is the horse I'm going to single in a Rainbow 6 or 2, and probably any of the other exotics. That's Bala Rocks, who, he has some back class. He's putting 3 starts together for the first time since 2017. He has every right to even be sharper and better today than he was in his last start when he won. He was hooked 4 wide into the turn. He was caught 3 deep in between horses. He was forced to make an early move up to second in between horses. He moved to the lead at the top of the lane, and then he was headed, but he dug in. He got the win. They've given him plenty of time to recover from that. Slight turn back. You look at him, he has just tons of back class. He's a grade 3 winner. He is multiple grade 1 placed. Let's go with Bala Rocks on top. We'll single this horse in a lot of spots. He's going to be a real key to a lot of the exotics for me. We'll include the 10, Sombier, who just works out a nice trip for himself every time. We'll use him in some spots. He just has that kind of style where he always really gets himself a perfect trip. The 1, English B, will come running. And then the number 12, El Tormenta. Don't love the post. Might need race, but some talent, some ability here, so we'll include in some exotics. 4, 10, 1, 12. And then up comes the Florida Derby. Just another race I don't love because I don't have a strong opinion. I think you can make cases for many in here from the inside. I'm expecting, as seen on TV, to run pretty well in here. He was in between horses early. He was in some traffic. He ended up working his way up to third. He was tucked inside. He was within a couple lengths. I think he's going to show a little more speed in here from the inside. You're going to get a good run for your money with him at least. Shiva Ree with the blinkers off, stretching out. You have to imagine that this one will be forwardly placed. The 3 disc jockey, it's hard to... You look at him a couple times now. Okay, he was a maiden claimer, but you look at his last start too. He didn't have a great beginning. He was, 9th early. He was 5 off, but he moved wide up to challenge. He just couldn't get to a 70-1 shot, who was loose on the lead. Soros, I needed to see more from. Governor Morris, I'm going to make him my lukewarm top selection. He's going to get bet down, so he's probably going to be more like a 7-2, 4-1 shot. And he's kind of a grinder, but I think in this race, he's going to be a little bit farther back. He probably won't be as close. He won't have to be as close early as he was in a small field. What happened was he stumbled at the start. He bobbled, and the horse right next to him bobbled, dropped the jockey. So just a really small field. United ends up kind of clearing off. So Governor Morris had to go and kind of stay with him to make sure that guy didn't sneak away. United came back and ran second in the Gotham. And Governor Morris was fine. I think he, with some projected improvement, he has the right to be right, in contention with the top lane here, and maybe we get a little value on him, even if he is like 4 or 5-1. That still feels more where he should be. If you're telling me you want to give Aja Weed one more shot, and you think he just didn't like Tampa, because he got a great trip. I just expected so much more from him. I really liked him in that last spot. It looked like there was a lot of speed, and there was. Sol Volante came from the back. He didn't really show much at all. Tiz the Law, no real knocks on Tiz the Law. I think he's the deserving one to beat in here. He gets himself into some trouble. He's had trouble. He's been able to get out of it most of the time. His one defeat, you can say it was probably because he also got into some trouble that day too. In the Holy Bull, he had a good start. He was right on top, and then he settled on the inside, and he was, saving ground. But then he had to take back. He lost the length. He moved. He was able to angle around. That's fine. You're not always going to be able to do that, though. And if he wasn't able to cleanly angle around, then he's kind of stuck on the inside. He's stuck there, and then you get, you kind of get put in that spot where you're at the mercy of the rail opening up or somebody giving you a way through. My first Grammy is Maiden, who I just need. I need to see more from him. He's going to have to really improve in here. And I just don't. I don't really know what to do with Independence Hall. He came. His race came back better than I thought it would. He just felt like he was... Sol Volante got a great trip because they were going quick, but I felt like the way that Independence Hall was sitting in that race, that was a race he should have won. I'm willing to give him another shot, but I wanted him to win that race. Not even from a betting standpoint, just from... That's a race where he's sitting behind, he's able to take behind a couple horses battling and get the jump on the closers. I like Candy Tycoon. I had him on Fountain of Youth Day in a couple different spots. He couldn't get through along the inside, so he had to end up taking back a little bit, and then he had to, come from the back of the pack, and he ended up winning a 4-way photo for second. I think he can continue to improve and continue to step forward. Sassy but smart. I'm gonna need to see, to see more from this one going along on the main against, a group like this, and then you have Ete Indian. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get the same trip that he got last time out. I think the rail horse is going to make him work a little bit more. I think, when you have Independence Hall in here, who's not exactly slow, Candy Tycoon can be a little bit quicker. Tiz the Law is going to break really well and then try to secure a good spot. Shiva Ree is going to be fast. So we'll see. Does he have to work a little bit more than he did last time out? And does that soften him up a little bit late? Because Ete Indian was very impressive. But I just, I don't get a great feel for the Florida Derby. I'll put Governor Morris slightly on top. I'm going to use as seen on TV in some spots with Tiz the Law. So I guess those are my top 3. 517 I kind of have in a top tier, and then Candy Tycoon I'll use with Independence Hall if we go a little deeper. Disc Jockey as a major price if you want to go a little deeper. I'm not talking people off end to Indian, so you see what I'm doing here. And then Aja Weed, but I guess 517 are the ones that I'll be playing in most spots. I'll play 1 or 2 small rainbow tickets where you go real deep and give you opportunity if you can, have a lot of horses in that last race. If some of the horses that you keyed in the earlier spots are able to come through. So that's Gulfstream Park for Florida Derby Saturday. Good luck. Some of the horses that I want to make sure to mention one more time: in race number 2, the number 4, Stealth; in race number 5, the number 11, Alma Shriek; race number 9, the number 7, Give Mother a Rose; and in race number 13, the number 4, Bala Rocks, who's kind of the best bet of the day. If we can get anything around 7-2, we'll play to win, and a horse that will single in some of the late exotics and definitely play around. So best of luck. Take a little swing on those rainbow pick sixes. I'll single Bala Rocks, and you heard how we stack up horses in each race. I always tell you in order, so that way you can tell if you need a little help how we have them like tiered. So best of luck, Florida Derby Saturday, huge card at Gulfstream Park. Let's take a quick break. Let's hear from one of our sponsors, and then we'll close things out talking with Andrew and Darin some Wrestlemania 3. Just wanted to remind you about one of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast, Sarah Candle Company. Visit sarahcandles.com, CERA candles.com. Use the promo code GINO for 10% off of your entire purchase. These are all natural soy wax candles. They burn longer. They are better for you than the candles out there that have that traditional paraffin wax. I know the people from this company personally. I've grown up with them my whole life. They love candles, and the goal was to have an affordable candle that everyone can enjoy. Use that promo code GINO. My favorite is Fresh Roses. The Fresh Roses scent is awesome. If you're a horse racing fan, they got Del Mar in there. You ever want to know what Del Mar smells like, but you couldn't make it out there? Order your candle right now from Sarah Candle Company. The website, CERAcandles.com. SarahCandles.com. Promo code GINO for 10% off your purchase. So recording this on March the 26th, Thursday evening, and we are just over a week away from WrestleMania, and unfortunately, WrestleMania this year is going to be like most of the sporting events that happen lately. Well, WrestleMania is actually going to be going on. Most sporting events aren't, but it's going to be without any spectators. We've seen racetracks have to do similar, but it's a little bit different when it's a wrestling show. And I bring on two guests, two good buddies. They're going to help me recap WrestleMania 3. We're going to go way back in time to the real ever first big WrestleMania show that felt like a massive show. And it's crazy when we watch this show that had the reported 93,000. That's a number that got disputed for years, but whatever it is, 80 to 90,000 plus people. And then we're going to be talking about WrestleMania in a week that's going to have nobody there. How weird is that?
Yeah, well, nobody, including myself, who was supposed to be there. So yeah. I'm a little bit jaded. True story. I've been to about, I would say 40 to 45 wrestling shows, because when I was a kid, I was lucky enough that one of my dad's good friends owned you'll remember the name, a Palmer Video. And he had a relationship with WWF at the time and Coliseum Video, where they would give her tickets to different wrestling shows because she carried a lot of the wrestling videos in the store. And she would always just give them to my dad because she had no use for them. And I got to go to like SummerSlam 88, SummerSlam 89, SummerSlam 91. There was a Survivor Series. I went to a Royal Rumble in Rhode Island. I mean, like the number of house shows, forget about it. And the crazy part was I have never seen The Undertaker in person one time, which is almost impossible.
The odds of that not happening. I know, right? That's so weird.
SummerSlam 91, he was on the video screen when he went after Savage and Elizabeth at the wedding reception, but wasn't really in the building. WrestleMania 10 is like the only WrestleMania that he was not at. And of course, I was there at the Garden. And I could go through them all, but I was telling a friend of mine, I'm finally going to a WrestleMania. The Undertaker is going to be there. For the first time in my life, I'm finally going to hear the gong. And now I'm not.
Oh, it's unfortunate. And Andrew, you and I have been to a couple shows. You like to head out every time you can. It's just, I'm glad we have the entertainment. I'm glad they've able to figure out a way where they can still put WrestleMania on in a safe environment for a lot of the wrestlers, and they're literally taping things probably right now as we're talking. And over the last couple of days, it's basically going to be a ton of pre-tape stuff that they've had like a week or so to edit. It's going to be a completely different experience than the one that we just watched, where we had 93,000 people screaming for everything that every babyface did all throughout the show.
I have a couple of questions and notes and whatnot. The first one is, I've actually been thinking about this. In keeping with this conversation, from now until whenever we're done, can I be considered an honorary Italian?
Yes, you can.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Good. I appreciate that. At any rate, yeah, it's been surreal seeing so many wrestling shows contested in empty arenas. Both WWE and AEW have been providing little quirks to do what they can. I particularly like the AEW episode where they had heels betting at ringside and betting out in the trailer. And then you've got WWE doing what they can. Miz and Morrison, Darren, I know you mentioned this, acting as though there was still a crowd there. But this is unprecedented, and it's something that I don't think anyone in their lifetime ever thought they would see before the events of 3 or 4 weeks ago when COVID-19 first started wreaking havoc across the world. It's something that I don't think anybody knew how to deal with. It's something that there was no reason to know how to deal with because we'd never seen anything like it before. And now going from a WrestleMania where you're traditionally having 60, 70, 80, 90, 100,000, however many people WWE says are in a building at a WrestleMania, to being in an empty TV studio that may or may not have been fit to hold, say, an old NWA TV taping. Mm-hmm. It's surreal. I'm going to be very interested in seeing how they handle it. And I'm also going to be very interested in seeing how the wrestlers treat it. Are they still going to go all out because it's WrestleMania? Are they going to treat it like it's a house show? The mind is blown here because we don't know what the payoff situation is.
Yeah.
We don't know what the rating situation is going to be. We don't know how the network is going to factor into everything because remember, they just opened up a lot of free content. It's going to be incredibly weird, to put it bluntly. And it's something where I don't think any of us are going to be there's obviously not a perfect situation, but it's very clear that they're trying to do what they can to make the best out of a horrible situation.
And now, go ahead, Darren.
I was just going to say, what the weirdest part is going to be is that Roman's music is going to hit and he's going to walk out to now no booze.
No booze. Yeah.
Kevin Dunn doesn't even have to mute the crowd. Yeah.
So, maybe it's going to be good for some of the wrestlers in some matches. Like we had said, that Goldberg Roman match would have had a really interesting response from the crowd. But we'll see. I mean, they have a lot of time to try to make this good and to make sure that if there's a match that goes out there that they don't like, they can obviously reshoot it if they want. If there's no one around, they can retape it. They can make sure that things go exactly the way they want to or as best they can in this situation. And you know what I think. We'll get into WrestleMania in just a second. I think we've seen the last couple of weeks. I feel like people have been at least not quite as hard on WWE and on AEW because they're one of the only things out there. They're doing their best to try to give us some live content. So I think people have been a little bit less hard on everything that they're doing. That might be different come WrestleMania because we still have such high expectations for what we want come WrestleMania. And they have all these storylines they got to kind of finish off or keep them moving. It's not just like they're in a weird spot with WrestleMania being right in the middle of this time. So it's just I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be crazy. We have another week left to build up, but we pretty much know there's probably going to be like 15 or 16 matches so far. So it'll be a good 2-night event now that they could probably have 2 pretty solid nights. There was one amazing night back in 1987, and it wasn't the day that I was born because that was 5 days before this. I was born on March the 24th. 5 days later, we have WrestleMania 3, and I think immediately the thing that we can tell with this WrestleMania starts with the beginning before we even have a match with Vince McMahon out in the middle of the ring introducing everything. He gives the Aretha Franklin, and the scope of this just seems so much bigger than the first 2 Manias.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you're talking about, obviously the first one at the Garden, the second one, which was kind of, a very weird situation with the three different arenas and people watching it on the TV. I mean, look, I went to the Raw 25 over at Barclays, sitting in a crowd and watching what's happening in another place when they were showing what was going on in the Manhattan Center on like the Jumbotron in the building is a very weird and kind of not fun way of experiencing something. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine if you went to one of those venues where you really got like maybe 45 minutes of wrestling in front of you, and the rest of the time you're just watching on these screens. And then going from that to this colossal, gigantic mega show that, of course, culminates with Hogan and Andre, which was the match that at that time, not just every wrestling fan, but probably everybody in the country who had any idea what was going on wanted to see. So, yeah, it went from minor league baseball maybe to, World Series Game 7, but at the snap of a finger. And obviously from that point, the rest is history.
Darin, you used a really good word there. You used the word colossal. Yep. And the first time that you see the shot of the Silverdome, even if there aren't 93,173 fans in attendance, you take a look at that one shot and it kind of makes you want to buy it. Just for a minute, You want to hope that it's true, because there's as many people as I think, at least to that point, the first time I saw it, as I had seen in one place anywhere in my life. It was, look at that. And that's one of the things that still holds up. The fact that, oh my goodness, just look at the mass of people, some of whom are in the furthest reaches of the building, can probably barely see the ring. And that's something that, you have your WrestleManias now in a stadium, but there's very few wrestling events where you feel like you have to be there if you can. And at the time, that's what this was, because this show, and we'll get into why, it had something for absolutely everybody. You didn't just have Hogan versus Andre, although that obviously was a gigantic help. You had two of the best technical wrestlers of all time at the peak of their powers. You had Roddy Piper in his quote-unquote retirement match. You had a couple of other matches on the card that had some mainstream appeal. It was really cool stuff, and it's something that even to this day, I don't necessarily think we appreciate just how much went into that show.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the wrestlers were feeling what you felt when you saw that scope the first time and how big it was. You could tell a lot of them when they were like looking around for a second, and it started with Vince right off the bat when he's in the middle of the ring, and he even kind of mentions it on a lot of the documentaries where he talks about he thought about his dad, and it kind of gave him a tear when he looked and he saw everyone like, wow, I can't believe we did this. And a lot of the wrestlers all throughout the night, even guys who weren't the greatest workers, they worked their butts off. They were bumping. Like, there was almost very few, I think maybe one or two of the matches that I felt like the guys didn't put a great effort in. So I think everybody could understand what kind of a huge night this was. There were some nice promos cut, and it would this is just a good show. I mean, there was a really strong build, and we start right off the bat. It was a good it was a good opener, and during the opener, we have the tag team of the Can-Am the Can-Am Connection and versus Magnificent Morocco and Cowboy Bob Orton. So in this, we have Martel and Tom Zank, which are the Can-Am Connection. They were only together for, 6 months or so, because Tom Zank did not have a very long run in WWE, WWF at the time. And we see Morocco, who was a former IC champ with Mr. Fuji. And then we see Randy's dad, Bob Orton. Bob Orton was involved in the main event of WrestleMania 1. He was in the corner of Orndorff and Piper. Now he's opening things in this one. This was just kind of like a good opener. Martello was a good tag wrestler. After this, he got into Strikeforce with Tito Santana the year following. And it was just kind of get the crowd hot and give the baby faces a win. I think get the crowd going.
Yeah, it was, and I actually, they weren't together for a long time, but they were a pretty fun tag team. They were a lot like Strikeforce, kind of like the high flying, young, good looking guys jumping all over the place. I remember, Orton kind of took a lot of a beating in this this match. I mean, he was in there for quite a bit in the beginning, and then Morocco would come in and take a couple of licks. The ending, the finish was kind of cute the way they did it with that little cowboy trip up there. But it was. It was a good match. It kind of set the tone for one thing that I thought in WrestleMania 3 is very interesting. So, like nowadays, you go to WrestleMania, if there's 14 matches, the thing takes 6-7 hours. you could have 2 matches that combined are over an hour. The entire WrestleMania 3, you have about an hour and 20 minutes of actual ring time.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, to your point about these guys going full bore, taking big bumps, giving everything they had, because a lot of these matches were
5, 4, 6 minutes. Yep.
Yeah. It was boom, 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 high flying, big stuff, big hits, made the point, next match. And, in 1987, you're not going to be able to keep people there for 7 hours. It's hard enough to do it in 2020.
I have a question for both of you. And this is one of the things that I looked up because I couldn't believe it when I thought of it. How is Rick Martel not in the WWE Hall of Fame for everything that he's done between the Can-Am Connection, Strike Force, the Model,
which is a great gimmick too.
He had himself a really good career. I remember in the late 1990s, he showed up in WCW and he could still work.
He was like in the U.S. title stuff with Booker T. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Really good matches with Booker T, and then his back gave out. I know that he's still on good terms with the company because he's been in a couple of recent video games. Wouldn't be surprised to see him show up at a Hall of Fame induction at some point soon.
Yeah, he was great.
Co-signing with a couple of things that you guys have mentioned. This was a really good opener. And Gino, you mentioned it, the crowd going insane for everything the babyfaces did. Now, part of that's a credit to Morocco and Orton because Morocco, despite being built as weirdly as any top superstar in the company for a while, I mean, he was pretty much all upper body and you couldn't really understand how he was moving. He was moving really good. Bob Orton, an underrated technical wrestler in his own right, without the cast in this match, by the way.
You're right.
When he dumped the cast, but it was a really good opener, and I agree with Darin. The finish was pretty creative.
Yeah, hey guys, I know we're talking about WrestleMania 3, but we have some breaking news to drop.
Okay.
Roman Reigns is out of WrestleMania.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
Due to his history with leukemia and being immunocompromised, he's not comfortable performing in that kind of an environment. So he's actually isolating himself for the time being.
Wow, that makes sense. That's something that people have told me as someone who's been a cancer survivor too. That a lot of times you got to be even extra careful. So wow, that will change things. We'll find out maybe Friday night if they're going to change that, because I'd imagine now they know this going forward, so they probably have something planned. This was probably like something that they already have taped that the rumor got out now. That he's not. So wow, great, good find, Darin. Glad that you were able to share that. So that's
all right. Where's Hulk Hogan? Can he still go?
Come on, brother.
Hogan Goldberg too.
Yeah.
Everybody complained that they did it on a Nitro taping. They should have saved it from a pay-per-view. They could put it in the big pay-per-view of the year with nobody in the crowd.
What's in the seats? What's in the seats? That's funny. Hogan Goldberg too. That is great. So breaking news there. Wow. We'll definitely be reacting and responding to that more next week once we know a little bit more about what's going to happen. Back on Mania 3. So one thing too, before we get into the second match, I thought was really fun. We heard Gorilla mention it, and he said it once, and then he says it later when Brett comes in. But he mentions excellence of execution, which was always a term that was coined, for Bret Hart. Which Gorilla was the one that kind of came up with that. So it was fun to hear that a couple different times. And I got to mention the announce team with Gorilla and with Jesse. To me, this is like a top 5, probably top 3 announced team. I think maybe only Gorilla and Bobby maybe better. You can make arguments for JR and the King maybe, but to me this is as good as it gets. And with the celebrity involvement in WrestleMania 3, I mean, Mary Hart is fine. She comes in from entertainment tonight and she does a decent job. But Bob Uecker has to be thought of as maybe the best ever celebrity, like in this capacity. He was awesome. He totally got the it of what wrestling was. He was funny, self-deprecating. He'll make fun of himself and make fun of a wrestler. He just him and WWE were a really good marriage.
It's either Bob Uecker or Pete Rose as far as the best stars at a WrestleMania. But with Uecker, a couple of different things come to mind. He had a couple of really good lines. His pursuit of the fabulous Moolah was an underrated, funny part of WrestleMania 3. Yep. Nice little running gag there. But the next year when he came back, he did a couple of backstage interviews, and that was where the famous spot where Andre the Giant choked him during an interview came in. WWE replayed that for years and years and years. And Bob Uecker still going strong, still doing his thing with the Brewers from time to time. And his bits in Major League, of course, some of the greatest lines in the history of sports movies. So not a shock that he took to wrestling like a duck to water.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, Major League, Serrano's going to need a rocket up his ass to get down. Yeah. No, but no question. I think Uecker's number one and Rose is number two, just because of the great work that he did in color 3, 4, and 5. Chasing around looking for Vanna White for the entire pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I mean, just epic stuff. And the way that Ventura would just kind of verbally smack him around the entire time was absolutely hysterical. And yeah, I mean, listen, the guys that do work today, they're fine. Obviously, JR is one of, if not the greatest of all time. But those early WrestleMania announcing crews, you just couldn't beat them.
Yeah, they were funny. You could tell they crack each other up a lot of time, Gorilla and Jesse, and this was good stuff. And we move on to our next match. And so the good opener, Can-Am Connection get the win, and they were a team that it looked like they were going to get built up until Tom Zank ended up leaving, and then Martel joins up with Tito Santana to form Strike Force. The second match. Chico, the flying burrito, the flying jalapeno. And then the next match. See, what I love about this Mania in particular, like even a match like this, like the Hercules versus Billy Jack Haynes, like I just remember this. Like I remember this match, the full Nelson challenge. It was a double DQ, and then afterwards, Hercules brings out the chain. They went at it pretty good, for the most part. Another one of these like short matches where they're just kind of throwing blows, and it's more about the story than it really is about the match quality. But this was a fun feud. This had a lot of build up weeks before. That's the one thing that I really noticed going through. All of these matches, even low down the undercard, almost all of them have really, really strong backstories and builds.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of this match is like the analysis when they get the full Nelson. Does he have the finger lock? Let's see. Are the fingers behind the head? Like what is happening? Oh no, they're not. He doesn't have the finger lock. Just it was like and finally, I mean, the majority of this match was just kind of a couple of bruisers knocking each other around, a couple of slams, a lot of big blows. Eventually, obviously, they get to the outside, and what happens, and Billy Jack ends up getting busted open, at the end of it with the melee after the match is over. But yeah, just you go from kind of the Can-Am Connection flying around and doing some cool stuff to these two guys just beating each other up for about 6 or 7 minutes, and eventually it going outside. But one thing that I kind of noticed watching this match, I don't know why I didn't notice it before, and Kenny Omega is 100 times the wrestler of Hercules. But watch Hercules go into the ropes and go off the ropes, and watch Omega do it. It's very similar the way they hit the ropes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know what you mean.
Really?
Okay. I got a kick out of the pre-match promo that Hercules did where he simultaneously tried to act like both a Greek god and a monster heel. And looking back, you sort of wonder what was going on there. And when I was watching this, I remembered the opener being good. I hadn't watched WrestleMania 3 in a couple of years, so I was actually looking for an excuse to watch it. So, Gino, thanks for that. But it's a case where I watched the match, and I remember being very pleasantly surprised because I didn't think this match was any good when I watched it as a kid.
Yeah.
But you look at it, and there's some psychology there. Billy Jack Haynes could move for a guy his size. You wonder why he wasn't a bigger star, because he had a really good look. And then you listen to some of the shoot interviews that he's done the past couple of years. I was going
to say, look him up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably why.
Yeah, it's memorable though, and it was good. And then he's afterwards. He gets busted open by the chain, and he's bleeding. He cuts himself. You can kind of see when he does it too. But it's a super memorable match for a feud, and just like a one of the lower matches on the card. And the same thing with the next match that we get to, which was King Kong Bundy with the two little people. It's a 6-man tag, and there's the midget wrestlers. So there's 4 of the midget wrestlers in here. King Kong Bundy's on one team with the other 2, and Hillbilly Jim's on the other team with the other 2. Talk about a fall from one year to the next, huh? The main event of WrestleMania 2 in a steel cage against Hulk Hogan for the world title, and then you're in a 6-man tag with Hillbilly Jim, like just kind of a filler on the card. But this is, King Kong Bundy actually got his WrestleMania moment when he ends up squashing Little Beaver with the elbow drop in here. This was fun. Like, this is kind of what Andrew mentioned. You have something on the card for everyone. The kids like this. and it was able to kind of continue with the heel that is King Kong Bundy, and it was just a kind of a fun thing to get some of the little folks on the card.
I got a couple of things here. And first of all, to anyone who's listening and who might not necessarily be familiar with the genre we're talking about, this is how the wrestlers were referred to back in those days.
Yep.
We're not being politically incorrect here. It's how they were marketed. So they get in a time machine, take it up with other people. However, having said that, first of all, thank goodness they didn't give Hillbilly Jim a microphone, judging by what we saw at the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
he
would have
might
still been going.
Talking.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, he might still be talking. Meanwhile, you look at the match, and from a technical standpoint, it is not anything resembling a classic, to put it extremely mildly. But Bundy elbow drops the little person, and then all the other little people come chasing him out of the ring.
Yeah.
And Jesse the Body Ventura yells, "Those turncoats!" And for some reason, I found that hysterical.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this match lasted about 3 minutes. Hillbilly Jim's speech went on for about 20 times longer. The other thing about this match was the name of one of the guys, Lord Littlebrook.
Lord Littlebrook.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, Bundy plays the mega heel here. Obviously, there's not much wrestling going on in the match. It's more of a little comedy riff, and Hillbilly ends up being the big hero, the big face, with all the little guys around him. But, I mean, look, there's not much to say about the match beyond what we've said. Little bit of a filler, 3.5 minutes. Everyone gets a good laugh. We flip the page to the next one.
Jesse actually kind of calls it early on in the match. He says, "I hope that Bundy gives one of these little guys the big kibosh." and then, like, yeah. And then, like, 2 minutes later, he does, and I was like, "Oh man, he called it right before it happened." So yeah, that was funny. As we move on to a Macho Man promo with Elizabeth, Mary Hart's trying to talk to Elizabeth, and Macho just keeps cutting her off, and he keeps trying to talk, and so just a little quick interaction there. But we move up next to the build for the footage and the rivalry between Harley Race and JYD. Just another one where, you look at the two involved. JYD at this point of his career, he wasn't really much of a worker, but it was a short match that had a really fun backstory, really fun build. They were battling over the King gimmick. It was something that they wanted to give Harley Race when he came over to kind of elevate him and show that he was a star. And it was great. You pair him with Bobby Heenan. Harley Race worked really hard in this match. He had a short little WWF run, but he had a good match against Hulk Hogan for the title that was on Saturday night's main event, and he ends up getting hurt when he goes through a table, and that back injury kind of ends his career. But he is, like, Andrew texted me the other day and said, "Man, Harley Race is really bumping around here." So Andrew, I thought this was a fun match. It's more, again, about not as much about the in-ring quality than it is about the whole story, what happens after the thing with the King gimmick and JYD stealing the robe and putting it on. But all together as a package, I really enjoyed this.
The biggest pop of the... Oh, I'm sorry, Darren, go ahead.
No, you first. You're the adopted Italian for the night. You're up.
Now, at any rate, the thing that I remember that struck me right off the rip, Hulk Hogan got the biggest pop of the night, unquestionably. Then there's a gulf. 2, 3, and 4 in some order were Steamboat, Piper, and the Junkyard Dog.
Oh, yeah.
People forget how big of a star Junkyard Dog was in the early to mid 1980s. This was 1987, a couple of years past his prime. But when Grab Them Cakes came over the PA system, the place went nuts. And you mentioned, we had texted this, Harley Race did everything possible here. He got in very little offense in the match, and it ended sort of out of nowhere with Harley Race giving the belly-to-belly suplex after JYD sort of controlled the match for a couple of minutes. Harley Race gets the win. JYD gets his heat back afterwards. Good, clean fun.
Yeah, it was. You know what's coming when he's sitting on the steel chair. I mean, JYD gives that little kind of funny little bow and obviously takes the chair to the King. The one thing I remember, the big grin on his face when he's leaving.
Yes, waving
to the crowd like the president of the United States, walking out with this big grin on his face with the robe on and everything. I mean, that's the kind of image that I took away from a match that, like you said, didn't have a whole lot of wrestling in it, but was a great story and a good finish. One of the other things we were talking about JYD quickly that I remember. I don't know if you guys remember the the match between Flair and Sting, the Great American Bash match where they had all the wrestlers on the outside of the ring. When Sting pins Flair, the JYD is actually one of the guys out the ring, and the big reaction outside the ring comes from JYD. I don't know why I remember that.
And he was the winner of the Wrestling Classic, which was the first ever WWF pay-per-view. And it was a tournament that they have. You can watch it on the network, and it was like their early King of the Ring. And so that was kind of a like another play here, as JYD had won this tournament a few years back, and Harley Race was now the quote-unquote King of the Ring. But he was crazy over. I mean, for the first like 84, 85, and probably even up until like right around here, this was a little past. He was like number 2 babyface in the company. Like, he wasn't ever going to be against Hogan, and he probably was never going to be in like title matches, but he was like the next guy. He himself was like main event draw, as he was beloved all over the place. He was always a big star. And then what's funny is, even after this, you mentioned like he went and he had a run where he was in the main event with Ric Flair in WCW, even like a year or two after this, when he didn't really have a whole lot left. So this was just fun though. And another match where it's like, I just remember the moments. You remember seeing, like you said, Darin, JYD being wheeled out in the little mini WrestleMania carts, which are really cool too. The carts that another part of the WrestleMania 3, the carts that bring you down to the ring, just kind of makes it seem even that much bigger, as you have to like wait to be brought all the way down to the ring. This was a lot of fun. And Moolah was involved there too, and then some of the stuff with Bobby, and she was the queen of the ring considered. So there's like a lot of moving pieces in here, and that was a lot of fun. We get a Hogan promo, which is really good. And he was the underdog here. That wasn't really like Hogan speak. He really was the underdog against someone who had not been beaten, in WWF, lineage, and who had not been even knocked down much. Andre, like, when he gets knocked down later on, there's an unbelievable roar just for him getting to the floor. So this was a fun promo from Hogan. And then next up we have Rougeau brothers, Jacques and Ramon versus the Dream Team, Valentine and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, with Jimmy Valiant and Dino Bravo. I mean, Dino Bravo, to me, it was just like go away heat. I just hated Dino Bravo. He was not even like the way you're supposed to hate a heel. I just always was like, get this guy off of my damn TV. But even this, which is just like a pretty basic tag match, you have the fact that after the match, Brutus Beefcake ends up turning babyface. He comes out and is a part of the next match. Then he becomes the Barber. So even just a nondescript tag match still has a pretty big moment at the end.
It does, and it was actually a good finish too, because the Rougeaus did that flying. That was a pretty aggressive move
for the time.
Yeah, for that time to come off the top rope like that, go over your partner's head. You're hitting the guy basically. His head is in between your legs. You're driving him down. I mean, that's a big move for 87. And then you get the heel finish where Dino comes off the top, hits the guy, and rolls Valentine over. But yeah, I mean, it was a good match. I mean, the Rougeaus could really work. Valentine was good for certain things in the ring as well. But yeah, I mean, then you have the moment at the end where you get the turn of Beefcake, and he ends up going on his kind of babyface run and becomes, well, as we'll talk about. Because people don't realize at this point he was not Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
No, he's no Barber.
He's no Barber. He's Brutus Beefcake. The Barber thing just kind of develops, and I remember that there's a great story where Beefcake, and you can watch it on one of the documentaries on the WWE Network, where he talks about the fact that they're trying to sell him on this idea that you're going to be the Barber, and he's like, "Oh my God, this is the arena. They're going to make me go out there with these stupid scissors. I'm going to look like an idiot." And really, nobody remembers him as anything but the Barber.
Yeah, it was great.
Yep.
Andrew, what are your thoughts on this match?
I'm personally more partial to the Disciple rather than the Barber. But then
the
again,
Zodiac or what are they? Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Now, the other thing that I can say about this match, for me, it was just sort of there. The Rougeaus could work, but it didn't really hit me all that hard. Having said that, Gino, history would prove that no matter how much you hated Dino Bravo, at least one other person or group of people hated him more.
Yeah,
that's true. Dino Bravo, who was like, now we're starting to see some of these wrestlers coming in who were definite mainstays from that like first golden era, really, of WWF, from like 84, 85 to about 99, early 90, 91, 92 or so, like right about when Hogan left. For the first time. And this was just kind of a match, but a good moment at the end. And then we get set up for like a really, really fun match. Another one was like Piper came back as a babyface after his WrestleMania 1 run as a heel, and then he starts doing the Piper's Pit quite a lot, and he's got this feud going with Adrian Adonis, who's got the flower shop, which was kind of a takeoff on Piper's Pit, was kind of used while Piper was gone. And this was supposed to be Rowdy Roddy Piper's final match. He was retiring. He was going to Hollywood to become an actor. I believe They Live came out 1 year following this like 1988. And that was going to be his focus. We know that I'm glad he comes back a few years later for one of my favorite underrated matches at WrestleMania versus Bret Hart for the IC title, which was really, really good.
Brilliant match.
Yeah. But this just shows you, like, man, Piper is over. The crowd loves him here. He is just getting unbelievable responses. He cuts a really fun, intense, like quick promo before we get a promo from Adonis also, but and another one where it's like, yeah, if you didn't have the volume up and if you didn't know the stories and stuff and you're just watching these two work, you'd be like, okay, the match was fine. But knowing everything, the whole package of this all together, this was just a blast.
Yeah, no, it was. And one of the really cool parts I like about this match with Ventura on it, that he keeps referencing that him and Adonis were previously tag team partners.
Yeah.
And that was in the old AWA. They were actually known as the East-West Connection. Ventura was billed as the guy from California. Adonis was the guy from New York. And they actually beat Vern Gagne and Mad Dog Vachon, who, of course, is Luna Vachon's father, to win the AWA tag team belts. I think that was in like 80 or 81. And they held the belts, I think, for close to a year. But and then, of course, they did wrestle in the WWF as the East-West Connection. So, I mean, so you get that playing in. I didn't really love the transition of Adonis's character to this adorable thing because he was completely the opposite of that. He became adorable, Adrian Adonis, and of course the play on words, and that there was absolutely nothing adorable about him. But yeah, you get the match. It's fun. Piper does what Piper does, and then of course you get the crazy sell at the end where the barber becomes the barber, and you get the haircut, and of course when he punches the mirror, it's like the great moment of, oh my God, he punched the mirror, and he loses his mind, and it's just you're right about it. It's just a lot of fun. It's entertaining as hell, and of course Piper, is fantastic.
I love these conversations because we all remember different things about this, and that's one of the things that makes this match as great as it was. What I remembered was, first of all, they made Adrian Adonis, adorable Adrian Adonis, as sort of a punishment because he came back from a stint of vacation, and while he was never a svelte individual, he came back significantly heavier. He could still work, but it was a punishment sort of thing. He still managed to get it over. More power to him. Unfortunately, he died not long after this match in a horrible car accident, but on the good side, what I remember about this match is, Gino, you mentioned the carts that brought everybody to the ring. Before Piper came out, one of the carts broke, and they were milling around. Piper, by all accounts, said, screw it, I'm going out there without one. And that fit his character perfectly.
It's a good point.
I don't know if I would have taken him as seriously getting carted to the ring like that. That guy was coming out for a fight, and him doing that caused a massive reaction right as he got into the ring. And I think he knew it, judging by the look on his face when he raised his arms and was addressing the crowd before the match started. I think he knew he made the right call, and history certainly bears that out. This match is not a technical classic, but on the fun scale, it's one of the most fun matches to go back and rewatch.
They got the shears, and then after the match, Adonis gets his haircut, and then and then Jimmy Hart's covering his head as they walk down the aisle, which is great. As they're running away, he's like, "Don't look at him," It's just fun. And you mentioned the run, Andrew. That was like the same. It reminds me a lot of '92 Royal Rumble, when he comes out and Flair's in the ring and Piper kind of just throws his hands up and he does like the crazy run at Ric Flair, it's kind of in that sense. It's like, I'm coming right at you, which is just great. Like, that's a great point to mention. And this was a blast. Like, I'm glad we got to see Piper come back because he was one of my favorites. And he was, what's incredible, there are a few people who could get the same reaction out of the crowd no matter what side he was on. He did it in Mania 1, and then he did it here in Mania 3. And there are just so few people that can be just as good on either side as a babyface or as a bad guy.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I remember, because you remember the Hart Foundation were heels.
Yep.
And they used to get a lot of heat.
Mm-hmm.
Brett is a guy who worked really well as a heel with the Hart Foundation. And of course, when he became a face, was one of the biggest baby faces of the early to mid 90s. So, but yeah, you can count on one hand the number of guys that can get that kind of a reaction both ways.
Yeah, so, it's Hogan, it's Piper, it's Brett, Savage.
Yeah, and they're the greats for some reason. Like Shawn Michaels kind of could get them both ways. He could get under your skin that way. Austin, yeah. It's just there's not many, but the ones that they're the all-time greats. The Rock, obviously, like both sides. So just you just saw the talent that he had. That was a ton of fun right there. And your typical brawl from Piper for the most part. He gets the sleeper in to win, and after this. One other point too, as he's walking out, the crazy fan that jumps in the ring. That's like one thing that gets talked about in a lot of the documentaries you see. He's leaving and some fan just jumps in the ring and real quick, and Piper's like, oh wow, he kind of like pats him on the back, and they cut away from it, and you can see security like just kind of shooing the guy out of the ring real quick. But I'm sure when there were 90, that many people around, it's probably hard to keep tabs on everyone who wanted to kind of jump in, and that was another weird thing I always remember about that match.
When Piper hits him with the strap the first time, I mean, that looked like a vicious, like full blown wound up, and the sound that you heard. I mean, I'm sitting there, I remember watching, going, "Oh my god!" Like, how he didn't even flinch?
It was intense. It was another one where it was just, hey, we're gonna have a 6-7 minute match, and it's gonna be more about the story. Like, just go out there and work hard, and that's what these guys did.
Adonis does the Ric Flair in the corner move in this match too.
Yeah, he does.
For a big guy, he does the throw me into the corner and flip upside down and go over the top rope move.
He can move. I mean, it really was a tragedy when he unfortunately died a short time later, because he wasn't an old guy either. He had a lot of wrestling still left, and they might have been able to build him up as a potential challenger to Hogan down the line for some of the house show runs that they did. It was really unfortunate that happened when it did, because he's a guy that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle.
And we get the great announcement from the Fink. The winner in his farewell match, Rowdy Roddy Piper, which just a good start to like the first half of WrestleMania 3.
Beefcake also talks about this match in his documentary with the hair, when he had to cut Adonis's hair. The buzzer that they gave him, the blade on the buzzer was terrible. And he was having an awful time.
Just struggling with it.
And he's trying to cut the hair, and he's saying nothing is happening. Like, he's just running this bracelet through, and then he's like, this is a disaster. They want me to be the barber, and I can't even cut hair right.
That's great. That is great. And the crowd just goes nuts as Roddy Piper leaves. So... and Gorilla even says the last time we will ever see him in the squared circle, which was definitely not the case. Next up was the Hart Foundation, with Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Nye Hart, and Dangerous Danny Davis, who was making his debut as a wrestler. He was the former ref who was suspended for screwing over the British Bulldogs and Tito Santana in their title matches. And so we have the Bulldogs come out with Tito Santana and Matilda. And it's unfortunate because this was starting to get to the point where when Dynamite Kid was injured, he had, some spurts where he was just really, really injured. I mean, from a talent standpoint, he was incredible and maybe would have been like a really, really all-time great if he didn't have the injuries that he suffered. But this is fun and what you would expect it to be, a good 6-man. They end up, Danny Davis gets the cheap win at the end. It's where the heels cheat, but as you would expect with the Bulldogs and Tito and the Hart Foundation, like it's a pretty well worked match.
I loved right before the bell when Matilda went after Jimmy Hart. That was outstanding, and it might be the one time where I was a fan and said, you know what, this Matilda thing might actually work, because that was tremendous, and Jimmy Hart sold it beautifully. And that was the preface to a really good six-man match between a bunch of guys that could work. Dynamite Kid, even at his broken down age where he could only do a couple of spots, he still had enough left in the tank for this, and that was good to see. Obviously, that's a really complex situation where you had a small guy pumping himself up with God knows what and causing a number of injuries to himself in the process, both structurally and from a brain damage standpoint, you have to think, judging by his actions lately. But British Bulldog was a big prospect at the time. Tito Santana could work. We all know about the Hart Foundation. And Dangerous Danny Davis could get heat.
Oh, yeah. No, he could. And Gino, we talked about in one of our previous dialogues about WrestleMania storylines and how I had said I really missed the days where they would build into storylines for months and months.
Yeah.
And you really didn't know that the storyline was even happening when it started to build. That's how good some of these creative ideas were. And Danny Davis, they started doing this shady referee stuff. Like the middle of '86 it started.
Yeah, like a year almost and a half. Over a year before this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and the build to this match, where they just, you don't even know what's happening until you get there. And I mean, he takes some serious bumps in this match. He takes a pile driver from the Bulldog. That's no joke.
Just spikes, yeah.
Spike pile driver. I remember the one move where Bret Hart slingshots him over the top rope, thinking that he's gonna splash on Tito, and he gets, or I forget exactly which wrestler it was, but they get their knees up, and Bret turns around and you see him just yell out, "What happened?" But he takes the spike pile driver from the Bulldog, he takes a vertical suplex from the Bulldog, and then he takes the running power slam from the Bulldog in 3 straight moves. And Danny Davis was a jobber too. And then, of course, after he takes the power slam, hell breaks loose. Tito comes in with the elbow. Bret comes in, knocks Tito out. Him and Dynamite get to work. And then you get the big heel finish with the megaphone coming in and knocking Bulldog on the floor. I mean, it's a very well done match. You have some phenomenal workers in the ring. So it's to be expected. And I don't know if you've seen the Bret Hart Broken Skull sessions yet. But he talked about Dynamite, and he said that Dynamite, in his opinion, was the best ring worker he's ever seen.
The Stampede stuff between those two guys was 15, 20 years ahead of its time by all accounts. And there's reason for that. Those two guys could work. And when you work at that level like Dynamite did, there are certain Faustian bargains that you make, and he made them. But it makes for some fascinating viewing, to be sure.
Mm-hmm. No question.
We get an Andre Heenan promo next. And it's funny, when I was listening to this promo, I couldn't help but think of just how the Heenan Hulk feud was so great for so many years. And even when they went to WCW, how it turned when they both turned. One of my favorite things ever is Bash at the Beach when, Hogan comes out to be in the NWO for the first time. And, Heenan says, but who is he? Which side is he on? And then when he turns and he's the first one saying, I told you all along he was a bad guy, and he says, Hulkamania is dead. And it was just funny to know how long that these guys went at each other. They were really great rivals. Because a lot of the time it wasn't even who Hogan was wrestling. It was Hogan's rival and opponent was Bobby Heenan. And, because whoever you put Heenan with was going to get a ton of heat and was going to just be a good foil for Hulk Hogan on the other side. So there were some really good different promos throughout the show, I thought, from Bobby, from Andre, and Hogan had a good one. This next match was just, you could tell they were trying to build up Butch Reed, the natural, and it's Butch Reed versus Coco. This is just not a very good match. Coco was kind of that guy who you would put the new heel over Coco as you were starting to build him up. And I think they had high hopes for Butch Reed, but he never really clicked a whole lot in WWF as much as he did before and after.
Yeah, his work in Mid-South was really good before WWF. I mean, he had some great stuff where he worked in programs with. Remember, Jim Duggan was a heel in Mid-South, and he used to work against him in Mid-South, and JYD was involved in it. Ted DiBiase was involved with it. I think Volkov. I mean, there were some monster names that he worked with very well in Mid-South. And then even after WWF, where he was only there for a couple of years, his work in NWA and Jim Crockett after that, I thought was extremely good also. So, yeah, I mean, this match is what it is. It's, Koko doing a couple of big drop kicks, 3 minutes, putting the big heel over, like you said. But, I liked Butch Reed. I really liked his work in Mid-South. I liked him in the NWA afterward. But he never really got the push that I would have liked to have seen in WWF.
No, this match was just sort of there, and that's the best way to put it. It was a case where they were trying to build up Butch Reed, and for obvious reasons. He had a tremendous look. He could work, and that was borne out by, as Darin mentioned, what he did before and after. His tag team with Ron Simmons as Doom was
they were great.
Transcendent stuff.
Yeah.
And he comes in, beats the daylights out of Koko Beware, because that's what Koko Beware did everywhere he was for his entire career. Chris Jericho actually tells a really funny story about Koko in his first book, where he would wind up going to Koko Beware for tips whenever he was in town, because he was just not intimidated by him in the slightest. It's a good read. But anyway, Butch Reed gets the win here, and that acted as sort of a bridge between a good match in the 6-man match to a match that a lot of people think is one of the best matches of all time.
Yeah. And that's Ricky Steamboat versus Macho Man. And we talk about builds and long builds. This was an awesome build up. The two went back and forth, and Macho ended up winning the IC title. He had the title for just a long time, and George the Animal Steel was one who was kind of feuding with Macho. That was in WrestleMania 2. Elizabeth was involved. And then, you had the stuff with the ring bell and the crushed larynx of Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And right before this match, which, as Andrew mentioned, if you're making a list of the best matches in WWF history, definitely the best WrestleMania matches, like you don't go very far before this match gets listed. And if anybody says it's number one, you're not going to argue with them. And it really still holds up. But what I really liked is that, Ricky Steamboat was never thought of as much of a promo guy, but man, he cut a really good promo right before this match. It wasn't anything crazy, but he was very intense. He was looking right at the camera. He was very passionate. And I remember like one of those things that like you always for some reason remember. And he says, "We have reached our moment." And that's just like one I always remember right before. It almost gave me goosebumps like every time I watched the match, thinking, wow, that was great. And you could tell they just go at it right away. This match is 14 minutes, a little longer. It is just counter after work. All the backstory about this match and how they sit down, and Macho Man and Randy Savage had pages and pages and pages of it written down. And Steamboat thought he was crazy. But I mean, whatever they did, Darin, this match is awesome, and it is going to go down forever as one of the greatest WWE matches. I mean, just one of the greatest matches of all time.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's two phenomenal workers. I mean, I remember like those. They weren't arm drags that Steamboat would do, but they were like he would twirl the arm over, and then he would like lift them in the air, and Savage would look like he was 10 feet in the air, crashing down, like just going the way they would go over the top rope and. Just drape the arm over the rope, or, obviously playing up the stuff with the bell and the larynx. He's got the bell again. Here we go again. And I mean, just two incredible workers selling the story, the entire match, which is about 15 minutes long. Obviously, it's by far the longest match throughout of the show. But even the way Savage like would throw Steamboat into the ropes, like it wasn't just like take him and like throw him from behind. He would grab Steamboat by like the back of the head, launch him into like it was just like everything was done with such like purpose, and taking it from this point to that point. And then when you see that documentary, like you alluded to, Gino, about how Savage sat down and wrote this entire match out on like yellow legal paper. Like every, not just like like every single spot, and having it planned out. And, it's incredible because you would think if you do something like that, something's going to go wrong. You're going to mess something up and it's going to screw up the flow of the match. It didn't happen. You get one of the most phenomenal matches that we've ever seen in WrestleMania. And, of course, the ending, I love an ending that catches you off guard. I love the roll-up. I love the small package. I don't think they do it enough today. And I think it's a phenomenal way that the match ended.
Phenomenal's a good word for that match. It's magic from start to finish. The entire angle was perfect. Steamboat getting his comeuppance in the end with a big win like that, ending a reign that had been for some time. Randy Savage held the Intercontinental title for a very, very, very long time. George the Animal Steele getting his element of revenge after the previous year was great as well. And then you had Macho Man Randy Savage, who lost that match, but you knew was going to be on to bigger and better things. And then the next year he winds up winning the World Championship at WrestleMania 4 in a show where the less said about that, the better. But at any rate, the story that I remember, and this is another Jericho story from one of his books, he was wrestling Ricky Steamboat back in 2008 when Steamboat came out for a couple of months, and they were doing a house show match, and Jericho decided to let Steamboat get a win. Only he forgot, the word association with small package and what it was. So he picks Steamboat up, and he whispers into his ear, WrestleMania 3 finish. And that's exactly what they did. And agents backstage were howling, and the crowd loved it. And Ricky Steamboat, one of the top 5 in-ring technicians of any era. That's how good he was. And as a babyface, few have ever been better. You look at that match. You look at his matches with Flair. Look at his matches with Rick Rude in the early to mid-90s in WCW. The guy had such a body of work.
I mean, he was unbelievable when he came back and worked against Jericho.
Yeah.
Like 10, 12 years ago, whenever that was. I guess it was
freaking insane. And it's just unfortunate that after this match, he decided he wanted some time off. But that wound up giving us the year-plus long reign of the Honky Tonk Man, which in turn led to the push of the Ultimate Warrior. It's really funny how this stuff comes together.
It is.
Real quick, we talked about people being in the Hall of Fame. I mean, Miss Elizabeth not being in the Hall of Fame is like the biggest trap. I understand there's probably some political things involved in that and whatever. But, I mean, come on. I mean, like, what are we doing here? She's the greatest manager, female manager, obviously by a country mile. The stuff that she did with Hogan and Savage, and I mean, and people don't forget. I mean, she was, after all the run in WWF, and think about having to work with somebody and do like the wedding at SummerSlam '91 when you're actually on the road to getting divorced.
Oh, I know. That's just
what it takes to do that. And the fact that she's not in the Hall of Fame is an absolute disgrace.
She was incredible and very transcendent. She was, the first that I can remember of the females in wrestling, and one that you just don't remember really Macho Man, especially at this era without Miss Elizabeth. So hopefully she will get her due at some point. As you mentioned, Andrew, the Honky Tonk Man. So the next matchup was Jake the Snake versus the Honky Tonk Man. And we have a good Jake promo before, and Jake has resurfaced recently in All Elite Wrestling, and he still cuts as good of a damn promo as he ever did, and he still has that intensity behind it. And this was, again, more of like the moment. It was Alice Cooper that was with Jake, and it was about Jake and Alice Cooper kind of getting the Snake and getting over on Jimmy Hart. But they were starting to build up Honky Tonk Man in every way that this match was a Honky Tonk Man match, where it was kind of slow, plodding. He was, cheap. He cheated to win, and then he was quick out of there. Like, that was what you would get from Honky Tonk Man, and he drew a hell of a lot of heat.
No kidding. And before we get too far down the road here, just one point about Miss Elizabeth before we move on. There are rumors that initially the plan for Randy Savage when he came in was that he was going to be managed by Missy Hyatt. Due respect to Missy Hyatt and due respect to Randy Savage, one of the great performers of all time, that would not have worked.
No.
And you get a performer like Miss Elizabeth, who the second she made her television debut, every eye was on her. And you don't see that anywhere. You talk about star quality. Yes, she had it. She's a Hall of Famer. Moving on to this match, though, Alice Cooper told the story for one of the I Love the 80s shows that VH1 did years and years and years ago. And they talked about the WWF. And it wound up being a situation where he goes, okay, I guess I'll do this, whatever. He goes there, he comes out, 90,000 people, and you can see his eyes were as big as saucers when he's riding in the ring with Jake. Jake has the snake, of course, and Jake does a promo. Shocker, Jake the Snake Roberts doing a tremendous promo. Let me show you my big shocked face. But yeah, you're absolutely right. This was both guys doing what they do, and when you get something like that, chances are it's going to be good.
No question. Honky, number one thing I took away from the match, his Elvis suit on the way in, it was his best Elvis suit that he ever wore. The white one with the gold and the gold around the neck and the gold scarf. I mean, tremendous Elvis suit.
It always makes me laugh when Jesse says he doesn't even get the chance to get his Elvis suit off. Yeah.
Yes. But also, one of the things in this match that you really need to take away, Honky's one of the best sellers you'll ever see.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he takes an atomic drop out of the corner from Jake, and I mean, it was like The Rock taking a Stone Cold Stunner. I mean, he goes down and flips upside down, rolling over the top of his head when he's getting hit, and he's hanging onto the ropes. I mean, he's like teetering like on a 90-degree angle, hanging off just a tremendous seller. And of course, you get the great heel finish, roll him up, hold onto the ropes, celebrate at the end of the match, and everybody knows what's coming. Whenever Jake gets beat like that, we all know what's about. Well, first, before you get the snake, you get the you get the guitar smash off the ring post. Honky just escapes, and then you get the close up of Jake with like the crazed look in his eye, like, what am I gonna do now? Oh, I've got heart in the ring. We've got him now. It's like, it's just a lot of WrestleMania 3. When you watch it back, you really realize goes way beyond the wrestling in the ring. And then you get this moment where Jimmy Hart squares up like he's about to, throw fisticuffs with Alice Cooper. And here comes Jake in with Paul Nelson, and the snake comes out, and Hart is just losing his mind. Losing his mind. It's another great WrestleMania moment, and there's a lot of them. And it's really what makes this show so good, is that it's way beyond what happens in the ring. The stories that take place after the matches are phenomenal.
And Honky was out there with Jimmy Hart and Peggy Sue, who was that was Sherry, right? I think that was Sherry who was dressed up like Peggy Sue. And just another one, the good build. Honky, crushed a guitar over Jake in the snake pit, and this was when Jake started getting really popular. Like, this was at the time when he was getting massive pops, and all the baby faces and the good guys were getting big cheers, but Jake cheers at this time were like really, really up there. They were starting to rival some of those Hogan cheers as we get to our last two matches. And this tag match was kind of like the filler before the big main event. You had Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov versus the Killer Bees with Slick, who the best part about Slick is he's still all beat up from when Tito Santana got him earlier. Like, his shirt's all ripped and he didn't get the chance to change, and he looks all funny. And the thing I'll get about this is we saw, Hacksaw Jim Duggan comes out and interrupts the Russian national anthem. I think they would have, maybe they tried. This would have just been much better as a 6-man, with Hacksaw in the mix and to add another on the heel team, because a lot of this match was even more about Hacksaw than it really was about the Killer Bees. Yeah,
because this was like Duggan's first big moment in WWE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He had just signed with them like a couple of months before. And this was like his introduction. So, it was great to get him out there, but I totally agree with you. They could have done a lot more with it. It's kind of funny. Like, I think if I remember correctly, I think like a month or two after this, didn't Duggan and the Sheik get arrested for like a DUI?
Yes. Yep.
They got popped for weed in the car.
For weed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, this match, it kind of is what it is. I like the Killer Bees. I thought they could work. They were one of those fun tag teams. I remember that big Survivor Series match in '87 where there's like 5 teams on each side.
Blast, yeah.
I mean, it's just and you have like, the Hearts and the Bulldogs and the Bees, everybody that you can imagine that's in the match. But yeah, I mean, you got the classic heels here. The Sheik obviously is at the end of his long run. You got Nikolai who had great heat at the time, and obviously, you got Duggan just walking around outside with the 2x4, which sets the stage for the character that he's going to be, for the next decade plus. But yeah, this match is another match where, okay, it's fine, it's there, but we all know why it's there. It's the filler before the main event, and you get to see Duggan for the first time.
Yeah, my opinions are pretty much the same as Darin's here. It's just a match. It's just there. And even on the rewatch, I was watching it and I'm like, okay, this doesn't stink. When does Hogan come out? And that I feel like is the crowd reaction for it, with the exception of when Duggan came out. It's not that great. And you can tell Sheik's at the end of his run. Nikolai Volkov had been doing the same shtick for a while. It was something where it was to get him on the card, get him a payday, and ultimately, cool the crowd down a little bit before the Hogan-Andre match that everyone had been waiting so long for.
And then up next, I mean, in wrestling, there's a ton of hyperbole. We hear this is the biggest match in wrestling history over and over. How many times? This was not hyperbole. This next match was, at the time, the biggest match in the history of wrestling. You had Andre the Giant, who was bigger than any championship or any title, and he was such an attraction that he would travel from territory to territory, from all over the world, different countries, and he was a star that, I mean, everybody knew who he was. He was one of the most recognizable like athletes at the time, who had been around for 20 years and up and down. And then you have Hulk Hogan, who at this point is by far like the most popular babyface wrestler ever, and WWF had done such an incredible job building him up through the whole rock and wrestling connection. And it was really the first time where it felt like, Hogan is the underdog in here and he may not win. And then leading into this match, all of the backstory stuff that we've now found out through the years of reading books and watching documentaries and stuff about how Andre was like in really bad shape. Physically, his body was not holding up. He didn't have a whole ton of he had right after this, he took a little time off before he was able to kind of have the next run. And even then, this was like one of the longer times you see him in the ring really working. And then there were even some of the rumors about Andre not liking Hogan. Like maybe he didn't want to go along with this. Maybe he wasn't going to put Hogan over here. So there were, things behind this as well. And you have Euchre as the guest announcer. You have Mary Hart as the guest timekeeper. And they come out, and the footage is awesome. I mean, the footage from 1984 to 85, where it's like Hogan wins the title and Andre's celebrating with the champagne with him. And then you have when Andre and Hogan are on a tag team against a Bundy and Big John Studd, and Hogan comes out and saves him. And there's a really fun match on Saturday night's main event with those four. And then we see the complete turn in the Piper's Pits segments where, with the trophies, with the Hogan gets the bigger trophy, Andre gets the little one, and then he's upset, and the pulling of the shirt and the cross on Hogan's that scrapes Hogan's chest and bleeds, and the Piper asking Hogan, "Are you going to do it?" Yes! Just the build up, the videos, I love watching them, and it sets up a match that, man, again, that like the common theme of most of this WrestleMania, where this was just such an incredible spectacle. Everything around it was about as well done as it could have been.
Yeah, no question. And like you said, when we were kids, I mean, look, I wasn't even 3 years old. I didn't watch this live. I like so many of us, as I started to get into wrestling and I started to watch the videos back, I would watch this match for the first time. I was probably, 7 years old, 8 years old. And when you were watching it, you didn't realize that Andre was, at this point of his career, was already well past his peak.
Oh yeah.
When you watch this match for the first time, you think this is Andre's peak, because of just the stage that it's on. And now knowing it, as you go back and watch the match, you can really see, like, even when he just whips Hogan into the turnbuckle, it takes him a second to keep his balance.
Yeah.
He almost falls over. Like, that's how bad a shape he's in, holding onto the ropes constantly to keep himself up. A couple of things in the match. The false finish from the beginning when Hogan tries to kill him, where for a split second, it's like, did this match just end in 12 seconds? Then the ridiculous part where Hogan tries to pile drive Andre. I mean, come on. Yeah. And then it's like the most eased back body drop in the history of pro wrestling, as Andre slowly stands up and Hogan actually slides off the ring apron and gently falls to the floor. Like, some of this stuff, in all honesty, is not great in this match, because look, bottom line, Hogan was not the best ring worker in the world. And at this point, like we said, Andre was in really bad shape. But, the other thing that we didn't know about this match, and you hear about it, and it's actually in the phenomenal HBO documentary, which if you have not seen it and you're listening.
So great. So
watch
great.
the Andre the Giant documentary done by HBO. It is fantastic. But Hogan going into the match, like there was no discussion between Hogan and Andre.
Yeah.
Like Hogan didn't know if Andre was going to put him over.
The exact opposite of what we had just talked about with Steamboat and Savage, right? Yeah, like he didn't know.
Going in, like the plan was for Hogan to go over, but there was no communication. And he talks about how like it gets to the point of the match where Andre's done. And he tells, he calls out the clothesline to him, and Hogan hits him, and Andre falls. And when Andre goes down, the crowd erupts. And then Hogan says that he says to him, like while he's on the floor getting up, slam!
Yeah.
Time to slam him, and as he goes down, leg drop, and he drops the leg, and that's it. But Hogan even admits that up to that point, he didn't know what Andre was going to do, which, look, you could choose to believe it. You could choose to say that's just Hogan being Hogan. Who knows? But it really does bring the storyline all the way home on, what is, to be quite honest with you, probably the most significant match in WWE history.
Yep.
There are a couple of things that I remember about that match. I remember Jesse the Body Ventura doing a tail of the tape as the two guys came to the ring, and that gave it even more of a big fight atmosphere than it already had. I remember Gorilla Monsoon, fellow Ithaca College graduate Gorilla Monsoon, saying, it's the irresistible force versus the immovable object, and Jesse Ventura jumping all over him to go, look at the size of the giant! Hulk is 6'8". It doesn't take much to provide that kind of an atmosphere. When you watch wrestling for a while, sometimes you can get a little bit snobby. You can talk about terms like work rate and selling and psychology and whatever. This match right here is the reason WWE does not book to those people, because you can watch that match at any time for any reason. It is a terrible match from bell to bell. Hulk is not a tremendous in-ring worker. Andre was 5 or 6 years past his prime. And seriously, if you haven't seen an Andre the Giant match from his prime in Japan, go watch. He
Off
does
the top
things
rope stuff. It's incredible.
Nobody of his size should be able to do those things. But at this stage, no. He was completely broken down. And you watch that match, and if that match happens in, say, the ECW arena, both guys get booed out of the building. Mm-hmm. But when Hulk picks Andre up, Andre gets slammed for, in canon, the very first time. It obviously wasn't, but in canon for the very first time, Hogan hits the leg drop, Joey Morella counts to 3, and the crowd blows the roof off the Silverdome. That's wrestling in a nutshell, and that's why, even to this day, you get people like us talking about WrestleMania 3.
Yeah. You get the Jesse the Body, what do you say? I don't believe it. And what's great is that he actually kind of gave Hogan props for the first time. I didn't think he could do it, and he did it, Monsoon, which made it even a bigger deal. You're like, wow, Jesse even gave Hogan props? He never does that, yeah.
And this, a couple other things, Andre and Heenan both coming in and going out, getting pelted by what looks like chewed up apples and God knows what else. If you look at the floor around the ring, there's just garbage everywhere. They're throwing everything at him because he's the perfect heel. And then, coming out of this WrestleMania, this story does not end.
Yeah.
You have, which is kind of like the weird thing. You have the big blow off in the big match in the biggest WrestleMania potentially of all time, but the Hogan Andre saga continues.
Yeah,
and you get to the Saturday night main event. Well, first you get to the Survivor Series. You get to the Saturday night main event with the two referees and Earl and Dave Hebner and
the plastic surgery, brother.
Yeah, and Andre
DiBiase, you intersect DiBiase into the feud, yeah.
And if you think about it, you talk about how things get planned with nobody even knowing that it's planned, and even the people that are planning them. I mean, you think about it. You got Hogan Andre in the lead up to 3. You got all the stuff that goes on with the Saturday Night Main Event and the title, and then you bring DiBiase in with Andre. You give the belt to him. And now you go to WrestleMania 4. You have Hogan Andre and the double count out, and it was the Grand Master Plan. We've got Hogan out of the tournament. It clears the way for DiBiase. And now you got DiBiase and Savage. And then you got DiBiase and down the line with freaking Zeus and
Mega Powers. Oh yeah, it goes from the Mega Powers to Zeus. Yeah, it's incredible.
You think about how long Hogan, Andre, Savage, DiBiase in some way, shape, or form are in a story together. I mean, it's like 2.5 years. It's crazy.
And it's some of the best work that WWF at the time, WWE now, ever did. It really is. And that's why we're going back and talking about some of these. And that's why this one is the one when we put up a poll that got voted on, because people love hearing about this show. It was an absolute blast. And that match only ends up being like a 12-minute match, but it was way more than the match, and what it meant moving forward, as you mentioned, for the next couple years of WWF, which just started the huge WrestleManias, because now the next 2 years, WrestleMania 4 and 5, they're at Trump Plaza, which is really funny and when we go back and look at those WrestleManias, there's a moment when Jesse the Body is interviewing Donald Trump, and he says to Donald Trump, he says something about running for office, and he says, if I run for office, can I get your support? And Trump says, whatever you need, Jesse, whatever you need, which is just so crazy to think about in what the time that we are in now.
Yeah, no. Trump is actually in the front row at WrestleMania 7 too, if you ever noticed it. But yeah, I mean, you get 4 and 5, and then you get to 6, which I thought was a great WrestleMania. And I was almost hoping that people would have voted for that one, because I will admit, and I'll take the heat, I was not a Hogan guy, and probably just because I was a little too young to be a Hogan guy.
Sure.
I was an Ultimate Warrior guy. And the Warrior Hogan match and getting the Warrior going over, and the literal passing of the baton was another phenomenal WrestleMania moment. And by the way, Hogan was not a good worker, and the Warrior couldn't, forget it. The guy did 3 things. But surprisingly, the
good
Hogan
match
from WrestleMania 6 is
good match.
Yeah.
2 words, Pat Patterson. That is his magnum opus. And the fact that he constructed that match from bell to bell with those 2 guys and was able to do so in such a way, maybe it's Hogan's best match ever. I prefer the Warrior Savage matches myself, and I was a Warrior fan too.
Yeah, I love that match.
You take a look at that WrestleMania 6 match, and then you take a look at the match those 2 would have 8 years later in WCW. And oh my goodness, someone needs to give Pat Patterson a medal.
Yeah, this was a good run for Hogan. These 3, I mean, in particular, 3 with Andre. The 4 was, the double count out, but the 5 match with Macho Man was really good. That was one of Hogan's, I mean, if you're making a list of his best matches from a work rate standpoint, that was a really, really good one too. And just a fun era and a fun time in the WWF at the moment. So I'll give a couple like overall thoughts, and then you guys can do the same, and I'll let you go, because we're already coming up on to the hour and a half point, half of the show. Which I was like, anything under 2 hours will be good. I figured we would go on for a while. But for me, some of the things that I love, almost every single match with the managers, and how big a deal the managers played in every feud and every match, from the Mouth of the South to Bobby the Brain Heenan to Slick. Mr. Fuji is in the mix, even Miss Elizabeth. I mean, every single match. The only match where there's not a manager out at ringside is in the Bundy match, and Heenan is actually Bundy's guy, and he even references that. Well, I wasn't out there, so it doesn't count as a loss, because I wasn't out there during the ring. But I mean, the managers were awesome. The major storylines and builds for almost every match on the card: Hercules, Billy Jack, JYD, King Harley Race, Piper, Adonis, Hearts and the Bulldogs, with the Danny Davis in the mix. You had Brutus turn with the Dream Team, and then the Macho Man, Ricky Steamboat, and then obviously Hogan, Andre. And then I just noticed in every match, everything, I always felt like the guys were working hard, and they really realized and understood how important this show was, and it was just a blast. I really enjoyed rewatching this.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't take a long time to watch because the matches are short. You get some really great moments. Like we talked about the fact that it's not all just about what's in the ring, and you talking about the managers. And, we talked about Jimmy Hart, and he's involved in the Danny Davis one. And then you get him with Alice Cooper and the Snake, and you got the stuff going on after Adonis where we have the creation of the Barber. I mean, you think about it, you have the creation of the Barber. You have the introduction of Jim Duggan here. You have obviously the monster moment of Hogan and Andre, and you have one of the, marquee great matches of all time between Savage and Steamboat. I don't know. Did Meltzer give this match 5 stars? Probably not.
I think he did. I feel like this was a 5-star match, and if it wasn't, Meltzer is insane. I don't think he's that insane. I feel like this was a 5-star match, and if it wasn't, it is, and he was wrong.
Okay, So last thing, when you think of, before we let you go, when you think of the all-time Mania matches, and we put Steamboat Savage up on that list, what are, I guess for me, the other, or not my personal favorites, the ones that everyone would think are the best? It's probably in the conversation with this match. I'd say with the Brett versus Austin match at WrestleMania, and maybe Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. Like, those are probably the 3 that get talked about as probably the best Mania matches of all time.
Yeah, you mean in terms of just remembering, or you're talking about the actual?
What are thought of generally as like the best WrestleMania matches in WWE, WWF? I think those were ones that are probably on the short list that everyone would come to mind.
I would agree, and I would add Brett and Owen from WrestleMania 10.
I mean, that's definitely up there.
TLC with the tag team.
Yep, absolutely. You're right. The TLC is a great one too.
The Razor Shawn, the first ladder match. Also,
yeah, that was a good 10. 10 was another fun one also.
Well, I was there, and I'll be honest with you, my father was sitting next to me. God rest his soul. I remember he looked at me after that match, and he said, "Darin, I swear to God, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen."
Nice, that's awesome. That is so cool, and it's like a memory you'll always have, and that was a great WrestleMania. So, hey, we have another week. We'll see what happens next week. If you two are free, maybe I'll have to get you two back, and we can do one a little bit later on. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's 10. I don't know. We'll figure out one a little earlier. But Darin, Andrew, thank you very much. Darin, first, let everybody know out there, where can we follow you online if we want to say hello and follow along with what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. Twitter, at the Track 7. Obviously, being in racing, we have a huge Florida Derby Day card coming up on Saturday. I'll be looking at the races because, and I'll put it out to the racing fans that are listening. I don't know when we're going to see a card like this again.
You're right. Take advantage.
Take advantage. Enjoy it. It's a tremendous racing card. The Florida Derby itself is going to be compelling, but you got Newspaper Record coming back, a couple other big names on the card, so enjoy it. I'll be putting out me so long as I'm not allowed to leave my house.
And about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat here. Twitter is at Andrew Champagne, and I am obviously in for next week because where the hell else am I going to go, right? But having said that, co-signing with Darin, Saturday's card at Gulfstream is a very good one. I'm going to dive into that tonight as I finish up Tiger King on Netflix, which, by the way, is the most bizarre thing I have ever seen in my life. Maybe we can talk about that at some point. But regardless, at Andrew Champagne on Twitter, myself and JD Fox will be sitting down tomorrow night to talk about the card at Gulfstream. Mandatory payout in that Rainbow Six. There's going to be a lot of money in the wagering pools, and you only have to be right once or twice in order to make a nice score. So it's going to be a really good card. And as Darin mentioned, you never know when the next time we're going to see something like this is. There are rumblings Gulfstream Park might close due to the situation down in Florida. Javier Castellano testing positive certainly didn't help things. I have no inside knowledge on that, but it's one of those situations where if you're waiting for a really good card, do not wait any longer.
I'd love to see what your Netflix queue looks like with Cheers and the Tiger Show on there together. It's probably
I think the algorithm is throwing up onto itself.
It's like not sure what to do there. But guys, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And one thing that you mentioned too, Andrew, was cool. I like how in each match we all kind of remember something different, or like something different stands out to each one of us, which was a lot of fun. And I always enjoy talking with the two of you. So thanks again, guys. And maybe we'll be able to link up again for another one next week.
Would love it. Be safe, be healthy. Everybody out there, be safe, be healthy. Follow the orders, because we want to be done with this sooner rather than later. So do what you can, be safe, and by all means, keep the vulnerable people in your family and your friends safe as long as possible as well. So God bless everybody, and we'll get through this, and hopefully I'll talk to you again next week, Gino.
Thank you, DZ. Andrew.
I'll be ordering some full-blooded Italians T-shirts for everybody for next week. What's your size, Darin?
There we go.
Extra large, but at the rate that I've been eating, because I can't leave the house, that might go up rather quickly.
Extra
you and me both, brother.
Yeah. Andrew Champagne and Darin Zoccali, thank you very much. Let's take a quick break here on That's What G Said. We'll be back in just a minute with plenty more. That was a lot of fun talking WrestleMania 3 with Darin and with Andrew. Great conversation with Erik earlier, talking NFL and all the different moves in free agency. We talked with Chad about the Texans, and then we went through everything happening in the world of wrestling, in All Elite Wrestling, and in WWE. So just a packed show. I gave you a little Gulfstream Park. Also, if you can get the opportunity to head on over, subscribe, download, rate, review, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, anywhere you get your podcast. Make sure to look for That's What G Said and give us a nice subscribe and a rating, and a good rating and a review. Have a great weekend, everyone. Best of luck. We'll be back next week with more That's What G Said podcast. Joey Cleveland, take it away.